Fine Entertainment. You can watch the show there and the Batchelor News radio show on the Batchelor News Radio Network. I'm LA Batchelor. We thank you for joining us on the Batchelor News Radio show. You could be doing anything else, but you decided to check in with us, and we certainly appreciate that. I want to bring in my guest. She is a therapist, licensed therapist, and of course, host of the Dose of the Dime with Yawnie Knox that airs every Friday morning, 9:30 a.m. Eastern. That'd be, I guess, 8:30 a.m. Central. She is Yawnie Knox. And Yawnie, always good to have you on. I appreciate you and hope all is well as you travel, as I can hear you traveling. Hope all is well.
Oh, everything is wonderful. We are making it work. Listen.
As always, you always make it work. As you know, and we really haven't really had a chance to touch on. I know with you do a lot of relationship awareness in terms of the negative vibes, how to get out of it, some of the things to look for. Well, October, as you know, is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and certainly it doesn't get any more important than that. If you want to be in a healthy relationship, right, you got to identify those that are not healthy, and certainly domestic violence is one of those things. Not just in a traditional relationship, but just interacting with those that you're involved with. The first thing I want you to touch on, Yawnie, is this debate I had with someone via text earlier in the day, and if there is a difference between physical domestic violence and verbal or mental abuse in terms of that violence. Can you share and really make people understand if there is a difference, and if so, what that difference is?
Well, absolutely, of course. So, physical violence, domestic violence, normally they talk about being physically violent. They're pushing, they're shoving, they're kicking, they're hitting, but they're also choking, which is something that a lot of people are not pretty much aware of. There are sometimes when, obviously without getting into the different kinks that choking is involved in, we're not talking about that as in a fun time. We're talking about a guy grabbing a woman by the neck or vice versa. These types of things are something that are prevalent and can be life-threatening later. Now, there is a difference, absolutely. So verbal and mental and emotional abuse actually is like, it's worse to me than physical abuse. Physical abuse, of course, can kill you, but verbal abuse, mental abuse, and emotional abuse, the things that we say to each other, putting them down, making them feel less than, telling them no one will ever love them, these scars are harder to heal, and they actually last longer. So it's easy to, a bruise will heal. A bruise will heal. Now, obviously, the emotional impact of somebody, there is emotional abuse involved in physical abuse, but there is a difference. Somebody can only emotionally abuse you and it still be a devastating thing to a person. Does that make sense?
It doesn't. You know what, sister? You know, one of the things you said. Listen, and I always do the full disclosure. I'm guilty of making sure I have to correct myself and tame my tongue. But it seems as though there's a difference between you, say, yelling at someone or raising your voice or getting angry or putting them down. Is that accurate enough? Like if you're telling them, they're making them feel like they have no worth, or you might say shut up. Is there a big difference between those, or are they
Oh yeah,
the same?
absolutely. There is
Okay.
a difference
Okay.
between actually having an argument and your situation be having an argument with somebody, and then your differences being disclosed and maybe in an angry way, and then having unfortunately, emotional, physical, and mental abuse is a systematic pattern. It's not just a one-time thing. It's something that happens often. And it happens often enough that the person begins to believe exactly what it is that's being said. I mean, something that's said in anger is one thing, but something that's said in a pattern of abuse is something different, which can also be said in anger too. But most of the time, it's because it's the only thing that they know to reach out and do. So, yeah, there's definitely a difference between lashing out in anger, which of course we tend to say things that maybe we shouldn't say, and a pattern of emotional, mental, or verbal abuse.
Wow, I'm glad you said it. It doesn't let me off the hook or anything, but it definitely, uh,
Well, okay, that doesn't
you
make
know,
it okay, but
right. But it, it's just, I don't want to. When in reflecting on this topic, I always do self reflection about, where I am in things, and for the person who's committing this, right, that's the abuser.
mhm.
Is it something in their past, and then they gradually get in your profession and understanding? They gradually go to it that they don't understand it, they don't see it. Do they need more counseling than the actual person they're abusing because they don't see what they're doing?
Well, okay, so the key word, and you said it a little bit earlier, is that you reflect on the conversations that you have, you reflect on the situations that happen. That means that you want to grow, you want to change, you want to shift. A lot of these people, this is what they knew growing up. So it is what they see as normal. They say it because it was said to them or because they heard it said to a member of their family. So it does require a lot of rewiring. It does require a lot of therapy, a lot of talking, and a mate that is willing to go through it with them, because I mean it does require a lot of work to back up and reflect instantly and say, wow, I shouldn't have said that. Or wow, I shouldn't have did that. I shouldn't have reacted this way. Definitely, it requires a lot more effort on everybody's part to get to make a relationship that has a tendency to be toxic and abusive work.
Just if you're just joining us, we're talking with Yawnie Knox, a licensed therapist in Oklahoma and Texas, also host of A Dose of the Dime with Yawnie that airs. You can see it on social media. We'll get into that as well on the BASN News radio show. So Yawnie, when you have those who are victims of this and those who are pushing this out, you said there is a difference between the physical and the mental abuse part of it. Um, Obviously, you said the bruises go away. So, if what's the danger in not getting help if you're the one being abused, especially when you go from, say, relationship to another? If you're saying that that person expects this from them because they've been abused, then outside of therapy, is there anything in terms of breaking that cycle? Is there anything that can be done in the interim as you're going through therapy to kind of break that cycle?
Well, just to be clear, therapy is not the only way for someone to heal. That, I mean, just therapy is one of the better ways for someone to heal, but it's not the only way to heal. I am a survivor myself, so this subject is kind of near and dear to my heart. There's a lot of self work that you can do, a lot of books and courses that you can go through, but you have to be committed to it. And even then, unfortunately, kind of like when you tear a paper in half, you can't tape it back together and it be the same sheet of paper and be the same functioning sheet of paper. You can learn how to operate in other situations, like with another relationship. You can learn how to navigate that without having a trauma response. And that's the thing. What happens with the difference between a victim and a survivor, because I'm a survivor, is that victims do not learn how to deal with their trauma responses. They don't know what the triggers are, and then unfortunately, when something happens, they go off because they don't know that they're triggered. and they don't know that maybe this person is different. And of course, you and I have talked about this before. If you don't learn from your last relationship what not to look for, or what to look for, or what not to do, you're going to probably pick the same partner again. So that's why healing is definitely important. There's a lot of books. I mean, like Inyala Van Zant writes books. I mean, there's so many books out there that are therapeutic and helpful for people going through that valley of self-healing, because it is a lot of work. And I don't advise hopping from relationship to relationship, especially if your last one was toxic, domestic violence related, or emotional violence related, because again, that healing part is so important, because you're going to pick, unfortunately, I mean, unless you're really, really blessed, you're 9 times out of 10 going to pick the same person with a different face, and you're going to be re-traumatized all over again. And if you have children, you're now introducing that trauma to your children.
And that's a great point I'm going to come back to. Yawnie, do you know in your research and your professionalism how much of it is a person being bullied leading to being a bully? Anything clinical, alcohol? Are there other things that lead to a person being abusive to another person? Any specifics?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, for instance, somebody, of course, they don't have to be the one being, bullied. They can just see someone else in their love, someone that they love, being bullied, and they think that this is the right way to react. That's, I mean, as a child. And then, of course, alcohol and drugs, and just poor coping skills, period. You could take someone who does not have, good anger management, and they can go from somebody who was mild mannered and calm to put them in a very stressful situation. And unfortunately, now they are hitting. And once you hit, and it's an emotional release, don't get me wrong. Here's the thing. And this is going to sound bad, but hitting, like boxing or anything, it is an emotional release. It is a maladaptive coping skill. It is a way to, unfortunately, release stressors, but it's in such a negative way to do so, because you end up hurting other people, of course. So yes, there are other causes and factors that align with domestic violence: stressors, poverty, alcoholism. And that's not the only thing, because of course, as you know, the domestic violence knows no socioeconomic bracket. So, but unfortunately, because of the stressors that are in poverty, there's more cases there than there are in an affluent neighborhood.
And it's great that you brought that up, because I know studies have shown football in particular, where I played, and I'm sure I probably suffered 3 or 4 concussions. But testosterone aside, you know, when guys stop playing, guys in particular stop playing sports, they don't know what to do to themselves, with themselves. So they get aggressive. They have this aggressive side that comes out. So I have to believe, to your point about this physicality part, that if it's not really sort of developed and tamed, that probably plays a part into it. Like, they're used to hitting people, right? So
Right.
they want to hit somebody. So again, self-reflection. So I have to believe that has to play in it. What about, we always go back to the black community, black and brown communities, and this whole notion of just stop doing it or just leave, right? Lock you upside
Mm,
the head, just leave. What
mm,
dispel that? Because people, men and even some women, I've heard my own family members saying, "Well, if he assaulted you 20 years ago, why are you bringing it up now?" And that kind of nonsense. I'm not a woman, so I wouldn't understand it, but it doesn't seem like, if you were sexually assaulted or abused in some kind of way years ago and you never dealt with it, and it comes to the surface now, why is that some big to do about anything?
well, unfortunately, because in the black community, and this is my experience, so let's be diplomatic about that. So, from my experience, I have noticed that in our Black community, we tend to want to keep our dirty laundry to ourselves. So when we reach out and we try to get help, or we reach out and we try to leave, we don't get the actual hello.
Yep, I'm here. Go ahead.
Okay. We don't get the actual support that we would normally get if it
Right.
were, oh, I mean, actually, unfortunately, a lot of Black families, I mean, speaking from old school terms, they don't believe in divorce.
Right.
So you don't get that kind of support at all when it comes to these types of matters. And if you're telling people about your abuse, a lot of older African Americans will sit there and say you're airing your dirty laundry, and
Right.
that's frowned upon, especially in the church as well. So the one thing for sure is there's not a lot of support for victims of domestic violence. A lot of women and men, because do understand that men are also affected by IPV, which is intimate partner violence and domestic violence. They stay in these relationships, one, because they don't have support, two, because sometimes they have children that are involved and they're held hostage, and three, because sometimes they're financially bound to these people. And then of course there's the love factor. If you did not receive good love as a child, you did not, have a good, healthy relationship to look at and model as a child, you look at this and you see love, it's harder for you to leave because you feel like you are being loved. Well, they love me so much. Look what they do. They don't, he hits me, so obviously he loves me, or, whatever the case may be. So it's a lot of things that go into. That's why when people say it takes 6 or 7 times for a person to leave a domestic violence situation, that's not a game. And it's not necessarily because they're stupid and they want to go back. It's because it's very hard to leave. Again, I'm a survivor. I left twice, but I came back. So, and it requires a lot of willpower, a lot of courage, and a lot of self-love or love for your children to step out and move forward.
It,
So sometimes these people are so beaten down by the emotional and verbal abuse that they don't feel like they can. And that's why the verbal and emotional abuse is there, is to keep them under their thumb.
I want to touch on that, Yoni, because you talk about embarrassment or sort of this it goes, you airing the dirty laundry, and so we, as in our culture, tend to you know make us feel those who are in that situation embarrassed, or shame, or they're doing the wrong thing, and Big Mama got knocked upside the head. What's the big deal? That kind of
Right.
thing. So, but what about when you look at it? And I've had some men, and certainly is nowhere close to in terms of the numbers that, but having gone through verbal abuse in my own marriage, right? Verbal
Yeah.
abuse, like I'm nothing and this and that. And we leave the church, and then she MFing me and everything else under the sun. So you get that, and then even the physical side. What about women? What about transgender people who are or
Mhm.
who are afraid to come out that they're gay and they got beat up by their partners? What about that? How do you help those folks, men, and those communities come out and say, listen, I did experience it. You just had a player for the Chicago Blackhawks who, for years was saying this, and they just the NHL and the team just all ignored it because he was a guy, I guess, and
Right.
he's just emotionally distraught at this point.
Right. Right. And unfortunately, that's the norm, because men, and this toxic masculinity is a huge thing. So men are frowned upon when they express, "Hey, I'm not okay." People, I'm being abused, I'm being hurt, and it's not fair. It's a double standard, and I totally am so against it. So when we deal with, and unfortunately, even in Oklahoma, the domestic violence shelters are only for women and children. So men, and who are, might be in what I call the alphabet mafia, the LGBTQ plus community, they unfortunately kind of get left out. I think the trans community is the only one that can get into some of these shelters, which is a problem. But there are resources for help, but you do have to reach out. There's actually a national hotline that you can call to, maybe get resources, counseling, the shelters, all of these things. But of course, you have to make the call. And that's the thing. And I have actually a friend whose son is transgender, and they weren't outed yet, and the partner was very violent towards with threatening to out her. And that's a huge thing that our brothers and our sisters are going through. So I feel like more of us should be supportive of that type of thing. But of course, again, this is a community that we're in, and we have to grow and change with the times, and that's the thing.
But how do you get men and those other communities to come out and say, yeah, I was abused, I was a victim, and now I'm a survivor of domestic violence? How do you get them to actually come out and admit that?
Well, we have to be more inclusive in what it is that we do. Like, for instance, I have the little Facebook group that I am, and we're very inclusive, LGBTQ plus. Come in, talk about your relationship situation, because actually it's pretty much the same. An abuser does not know a gender. An abuser does not know, oh, you're a man, so I can't do this. So our relationship talks need to be open, and it needs to be a safe space for everybody. And that's what I'm trying to push, is that we need to be more of a safe space for all of these types of relationships, so we can put this stuff on the table and find out where everybody is, so maybe we can get on one accord and start helping people who really need the help.
Yeah, I mean, a great point, and that's my point. Like, if we can have open conversations, we often, you and I have talked about having race conversations. People are afraid to have. We don't have real, hardcore, honest race conversations. Then things don't change. It's the same thing with your abuse. You're abused. It doesn't matter who you are and how much money you make or what color, whatever. You're being abused, but society has this macho way and all that kind of stuff. So two final questions. With kids, we always talk about about this generations and how if you dealt with this as a child, it's almost like babies having babies. If nobody taught you not to have kids, and this is why, then you wind up having kids. So talk about the detriment of being abused or being an abuser, and the ramifications of both. Because if you've been abused, then it takes on a different mindset with your kids. You might be overly protective in some cases. And then as an abuser, all you're doing is passing along. It's cool just to slap a woman around and that kind of thing. Hey, I saw my father do it, so I might as well do it to my girlfriend and my wife.
So I will be honest and very transparent. The main reason why I left was because I found out that my son, he was 5 at the time, had grabbed a girl the same way that my husband had been grabbing me and pushed her against the wall.
Wow.
And that was the breaking point for me. And my choice is my choice. If I want to screw up my life, I will screw up my life. But I will not drag my children with me. They deserve better.
That's right.
So for me, it was that was the breaking point for me. I left and I never went back. So yes, you can break that cycle, you can break the change, but do understand that even if you think that no one is watching, even if you feel like nothing, is being, that your children don't know, they know.
They know.
They may not see it, but they definitely hear it. And what I've been told via the research is that hearing domestic violence, not seeing it, hearing it, is worse to a child because they don't know what's going on.
Wow.
So that is by itself is a big deal. So all the yelling, the screaming, the throwing things, if they don't see that mommy is okay or that daddy is okay, I mean, that's a big deal.
And Yawnie, I just have to go back. Your son, I think you say your son was 5. Your child
Yes,
was 5 years old. 5
yes.
grabbing because he saw his dad. I don't know your ex, and no disrespect, but 5 years old and seeing that and getting that at 5 years old, that is profound. Like, what do you know at 5? You're a baby. Like that. That's
Because daddy's the hero.
right.
Daddy is the hero. I want to be just like daddy. And that's what I'm saying. Our children, they watch us because this is where they get their concept of love. How you speak to your mate is how your children are going to speak to their mate. What they take from their mate is exactly what you take from your mate. So there is no difference in between that situation. What you are showing them is love. So if they don't see a positive relationship within their mother and father, or even their sister and sister's husband, or even uncle and uncle's wife, if they don't see a positive relationship in any family member or anyone close to them, then they're going to mirror that negative, that toxic relationship, whether it be yelling, screaming, throwing stuff, whether it be beating, whether it be you ain't bleep, 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 whatever it is, they're going to mirror all of
Yeah, and a lot of us as parents, we both parent. We don't. Some of us don't give credit to kids. They're smarter than we think. They
that.
understand a lot more than what we think, and we think we're hiding stuff from them, and they know what time it is. They just know. And so what you talked about with your son and understanding at 5 years old, not understanding, but just kind of emulating dad, superhero, and I get that. It's really hard. Final question for you before you promote your stuff is: what are some of the signs that people need to see, um, to either prevent yourself getting into a abusive relationship, or understanding that the fact is that you are in that situation and you want to get out.
Okay, so a couple of the red flags that we have talked about before is number one, listen to how they talk to other people. If they talk to other people in a disrespectful manner, if they're talking to their loved ones, like mother, their dad, their sister, their brother, in a disrespectful manner, you want to take note of that, because how they talk to the people that they're most comfortable with is a reflection of how they're eventually going to talk to you. Second thing is, if they talk to the wait staff or people that don't really have much of a pull on them, if they talk to them disrespectfully, they're just a disrespectful person, period. And that's something that you don't want. If they seem to be possessive, that's something that you don't want. If they talk about controlling issues, like, oh, I grabbed her phone and I did this and this, those are things that you want to consider. Definitely. So those are the red flags: how they handle their anger, what they learned from the last relationship. I always ask that question because it's important. Um, how they treat other people. And definitely, if they start love bombing you, that's something that you want to catch that up front.
Love
And I
bombing.
think,
Love
yeah.
bombing. What's love bombing?
Okay, so love bombing, consider somebody gives you everything you want. They hear you, they listen to you, everything you like, they say they like. They are everything you want to do, they want to do that too. They buy you expensive gifts, they take you on expensive trips, they shower you with affection. Everything that you ask for, they do. That goes on for about 2-3 months, because 3 months is as hard as long as they can hold it. 3 months is the number that they say most people can be fake. Once that 3 months hit, then all of a sudden they drop. No conversation, no call. They stop talking to you.
That
And then
sounds
all
like an enabler, though. Like they just enabling whatever you say. Yes, 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 yes. They say yes, 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 yes to everything that you want and you agree on.
So enabling is more so when you're talking about a bad habit. This is somebody that come in and they've done everything that you said that you wanted, and you're like, oh my God, I found my soulmate. This girl is amazing, right? And then, like I said, once they feel like they got you, because it doesn't always take 3 months. Once they feel like they got you, all of a sudden it drops. No calls, no phone conversations. And you're like, what's the first thing you ask? What did I do?
Right.
But you didn't do anything. That is love bombing. They get you hooked and then they pull it out from under you. Okay.
Let me ask you this: the final thing, real quick, is to your point about how they are loving on you and things of that nature. But you see this whole controlling thing. Can the controlling thing Is the controlling thing going to lead to the physical, or controlling just going to be mental, verbal abuse? Because some people
So,
may not be like they want to hit you, but they controlling and they verbally abusive.
what can lead to both?
Okay.
To gauge whether or not they're going to be, because see, I can't even say that. I can't even say that. There are exceptions to every rule. Controlling is always a red flag because they're going to be possessive. They're going to isolate you from your friends and family. They're going to make it so that they are your only sense of support. And so you have nowhere else to turn. The controlling aspect, that's what that does. What you want to look for as far as hitting, I want to say, is how they handle anger. If they've had a bad day, how do they deal with it? What are they doing? Do they have effective coping mechanisms? I mean, and we've talked about that before on my radio show. You got to have something that you can do to release negative energy. And it's real because, as a football player, you were telling me, you have to find a place to put all of that energy.
Yeah.
So yeah, you want to find out how they deal with their anger, and that will kind of tell you how rough and aggressive they can be. Even women women can get bucked. I'm telling you.
Yeah, and the one thing I love about your show, at the end, you always give affirmations, because those are things that you can take and absorb. I don't want to get all biblical and scriptural, but you know what I'm saying, like affirmations and living by those things and absorbing and applying them to your life. So I think that is important. Speaking of your show, please do talk about your show, and please do talk about how people can follow you on social media. I know you have online conversation. You was talking about that open forum, that safe space. Talk about your social media and your show.
Okay, so my show is called A Dose of the Dime. And so what it is we're just talking about relationships. There are things that I feel like people don't take into consideration when we're dealing with relationships. What are red flags? What are narcissists? What is toxic? All these $10 terms that we always hear about. What is it really, and how does it relate to us? So we're having open conversations, and we're talking about things that maybe we didn't talk about with our parents as we should have. Okay. So, and on my, I am actually available on all forms of social media. I'm on TikTok. And my TikTok is not necessarily professional, so don't come for me. Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I don't do much on Twitter. I am on Instagram. And of course, we have that open public group, A Dose of the Dime radio show. It's on Facebook and it's public. So you can come in. The only thing we do not allow is we do not allow infighting. You are welcome to have your opinion, but of course, this is a safe space. So you're welcome to have your opinion, but everybody else is entitled to theirs. We will not have bickering back and forth and name calling. So I will cut that out, nip it in the bud.
Yeah, I've seen that, and I've seen some of your topics too. So people can get a little raw, and you're very raw back with them.
Really back in.
In honesty, but I appreciate it, Yawnie. Listen, I will talk with you at the time of this broadcast tomorrow. 9:30 Eastern time. We got to get that first. Come on, we got to.
Yeah, at 9:30 Eastern time, 8:30 Central.
That's right. And Music Soul Child, by the way.
Ooh, that's sexy. He came to town twice.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
All right. So you'll enjoy that once you listen, and we'll plug that too. But thank you, Yawnie. You do your thing. I appreciate you. Okay.
Yes, sir. Have a good day.
You too. Thank you so much.
Right.
Always good to have Yawnie Knox on again. Her show is A Dose of the Dime, and it airs at 9:30 a.m. Eastern. I always tease her, Eastern time, on the BASN News radio network. And you can listen to it at thebachelornews.airtime.pro, thebachelornews.airtime.pro. You go right there and you can listen to her show, and you can certainly watch it on Big Mind Entertainment and the Bachelor News on Fire Stick and Roku. Want to bring in my next guest, who's patiently waiting on the line, and I appreciate him. Before I do that, I do need to mention this because it's very important. As we talked about the domestic violence in October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. If you have any issues along those lines, if you are concerned, if you know somebody that's going through, you can call 1-800-799-SAFE. That's 1-800-799-7233. 1-800-799-SAFE or 1-800-799-7233. Domestic violence, folks, is real. It's real. It's not all physical. It's a lot of different elements to it. And so we want to make sure people have that. If you didn't get it, you can email me at labachelor40@gmail.com or hit me up here on StreamYard as you're watching this live. I do want to bring in my next guest. It's a pleasure always to have him on with his insight as it relates to HBCU sports. He is from Urban Media and of our leader of HBCU Sports Media Association, where I'm fortunate to have a vote on the top 10s, mid and majors HBCUs. He's Trevin A. Jones. Trevin, I appreciate your time, my friend, and I know you got some things going. We're gonna keep it as short as we can, but thanks for coming on, sir.
No doubt, man. It's always an honor to be on your show. You know how we do. HBCU Pro Sports Media Association. I'm blessed to be a part of UrbanMediaToday.com. And as you said, and you're an avid HBCU follower as well. You share your wealth of information, so that's greatly appreciated. I apologize. I'm in the same room. There's another podcast going on behind me, and then I have another one after this. So just trying to stay busy, bro. But thank you for having me.
Absolutely, and I know, and this is real radio. This is what we do, real radio. So we're gonna keep it moving. I wanted to ask you about the situation that happened with Jon Gruden as it relates to, and Mike Tomlin, as it relates to the black coaching tree. Before we get to some of the other stuff. And so Jon Gruden, as you know, and people who don't know, was a white coach, a coach for the Raiders, who lost his job because he made, I put to the side, racist comments, put that aside. They were ready to move on from that, to me, Trevin, but made homophobic and other, stuff in terms of emails, and it came to a light, and he lost his job as the head coach at the Las Vegas Raiders. This is the same Jon Gruden, Trevin, as you know, who was out of coaching for 20 years, 10 years, whatever it was. It was doing the ESPN broadcast and doing Monday Night Football. This is the same Jon Gruden who won a Super Bowl with Tony Dungy, a black coach, team in Tampa Bay. This is the same Jon Gruden that had a losing record in the playoffs. It's the same Jon Gruden who didn't win the first time around with the Raiders and came back for $100 million. And so you look at that, and you look at, here's a white man that doesn't have to do anything, and he gets another job and $100 million. And then you get Mike Tomlin, right, who's come up through the ranks from William and Mary, right? We know that, who coached at Tampa and not a lot of experience, who's lived this life to be a head football coach in the National Football League, who has been successful for my Steelers for 14 years, who's won a Super Bowl, been to another, 9 playoff appearances, 3 AFC championship games, never a losing season, is asked about if he should take a college job. So one guy who doesn't have the resume, who's white, and another guy who has the resume, who's black, who's done the thing, yet the disrespect continues. And I ask this because A, is there a disrespect that you see in regards to Mike Tomlin in the manner, not the question or the person who asked it, but the fact that they asked it as it relates to downgrading yourself from pro to college, and what he said, which was, would you ask Sean Payton, who's white, coaches for the Saints, or Andy Reid, who is white, who coaches for Kansas City, who not only has a lesser resume than Mike Tomlin? And then the whole tree thing, Andy Reid has this tree. Mike Holmgren has the tree. Bill Belichick has the tree. Mike Tomlin can have a tree, but they don't talk about that. So talk about, to me, the lack of respect and the way moving forward when it comes to a Tomlin and Eric Bieniemy and some of these other guys, and some even, some of these guys who are HBCUs who have been coaching forever and been very successful, that have trees, but nobody wants to give credence or respect to.
That's a lot. First and foremost, I'll start at the beginning. Kudos to the LA Raiders, Las Vegas Raiders franchise, because Art Shell, first black head coach in
That's right.
the NFL, came through the Raiders, who were the Oakland Raiders at the time. So first and foremost, I want to say kudos to Oakland for doing that. And not only that, but if I'm not mistaken, the Oakland Raiders hired the league's first woman CEO in Amy Trask. So I can see the diversity there. John Gruden, not to belittle him or put him down, but there's a disparity. Everybody sees it. Everybody, if you want to just go black and white, it's there. You see it all the time. John Gruden actually coached my favorite team in the NFL, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, to a Super Bowl. But I always said, and you may have heard me say that was Tony Dungy's team. It was just a year later. When you speak about the trees, Mike Tomlin comes from the Tony Dungy tree, believe it or not. He was down there in Tampa Bay with Coach Dungy. So there, when you ask the question, and there's a lot that you put out there, there's a lot that I'm trying to address at the same time. But when you put that question out there, of course, there's a matter of disrespect. Asking Mike Tomlin if he's going to coach USC, which, by the way, I'm a USC Trojan fan, so I would love to see him coaching USC. But at the same time, Mike Tomlin has won Super Bowls. He was one of the youngest coaches to win a Super Bowl, and he didn't take him but 3 years, if I'm not mistaken, to win a Super Bowl for your Pittsburgh Steelers when he came into the league.
That's right.
So when you see someone with that type of resume, no, you don't ask them to coach a college team. Now, if it was in reverse and we're talking NCAA championships and then ask them to coach, NFL teams, of course, in the opposite direction, you would definitely do that. But you don't ask a man that's won more than one Super Bowl and taking a professional team to the highest level that it expects to achieve year after year and say, okay, how about coaching in the college ranks? I think that his moment at the microphone when the question was first posed to him was a drop the mic moment. And he's intense. He's just an intense brother. And he's from William and Mary. He went to William and Mary. I went to Norfolk State.
Right.
So down in the Tidewater area, and to know that he actually has passed through there, so much talent has come through that area is just incredible. Talking about Hampton, Norfolk, Newport News, that area there. Kudos to, Coach Tomlin. I love the way he addresses the audience. Every time Coach Tomlin opens that microphone, it's strictly professionalism. It's direct. It is intense. And you get his meaning. So I can see why he got the position that he got with the Steelers. Because remember, LA, when Coach Tomlin was even up for the job with the Steelers, initially, there were some questions about, was Arians was involved, if I'm not mistaken? Coach Arians was on the kid. So Coach Tomlin, who at the time was considered to be kind of wet behind the ears, but he had experience. Again, he came from that Tony Dungy tree. He was just as impressive then as he is now. So kudos to him. Back to John Gruden. 10 years, $100,000. Come on, man. He was coming from TV. He was coming from ESPN, and you're going to offer him 10 years, $100 million to come coach your team. Now, I don't see any brothers getting that opportunity, especially not at that rate, not at that financially. Are you kidding? I mean, and how do you prevent yourself? I kudos to all the coaches, to the black men and black women who are coaching, because how do you keep yourself level-headed, motivated, and keep yourself at the position where you can motivate the young players, whether it be amateur or professional, to play the game they love at the highest level? How do you, as a coach, see the disparity, seeing the disrespect, keep yourself going so that you can help others? That is an awesome person, without question. John Gruden shouldn't have gotten the offer that he got. I mean, he should have resigned. I think the NFL should have gotten rid of him right away. I think the NFL should have stepped in. I think that the commissioner of the NFL, it doesn't matter. At that point in time, you see all of this evidence, and if you're privy to it, you know what evidence is out there, then you get rid of the problem. There's just too many things out there to whereas at this point in time, especially after the pandemic, where everything's come to the surface, everything is out in the open. So if you see things that are out in the open, it's time to just nip it in the bud, take care of it, and show people that you're real.
And the thing is that, you know, he didn't get, when he came out, when he said the things about DeMaurice Smith, they were ready to forgive him. They were ready to walk away, and well, you know, it was a long time ago, and people changed. And then when the transgender stuff and all that stuff came out, that's when he got fired. So it wasn't for the racist stuff about the black dude. It was about been. You know, all the other stuff.
Right, but you see how old it was. I mean, in LA. I don't buy the fact that people did not know until recently. This was known. This was known years ago. Okay. Yep. And you're just giving somebody a pass. Now, he wasn't all that impressive with the Las Vegas Raiders as he was coaching them as the Oakland Raiders. He wasn't that impressive as it is, even on and off the field. So I'm kind of wondering, like, okay, so what did he have? What type of connection did he have in the league, or even with the owners? See, I did say kudos to the Las Vegas Raiders franchise at the beginning of my conversation. But as we discussed this, I would also say that the owner of the Las Vegas Raiders needs to be questioned even more.
Who you telling? And not only that, you saw Roger Goodell say, hey, we're not sharing some of those emails because they know.
It's the old boy
these
network.
People are going to be on blast. These old middle-aged, and this is me saying, these middle-aged white guys who have these conversations and say these different things all the time are going to be on blast. And it will, talk about Pandora's box, will be blown open. If Congress got all these emails like they want, and he's denying it, or the NFL is denying it, man, this thing would be so wide open that, and sadly enough too, Trevin, black and white and otherwise, there still would be some people that would still support the NFL and watch the games and things of that nature.
I'm going to tell you this. I love football. I would watch football. I would watch the NFL. I am looking because I'm thinking as I'm speaking with you, the picture of Colin Kaepernick taking a knee with an afro proudly. I think that scared a lot of people. And they missed the whole message that Colin was talking about. Now, you might say, Trevin, we're talking about John Gruden. You just brought up Colin Kaepernick. Well, Colin Kaepernick, don't sleep. He took a knee for more than one issue. He took a knee to say, look, we need to be paying attention to what's going on in this world. And if I'm on my platform, which he wanted to be all his life, he wanted to be an NFL quarterback. If he would sacrifice that and then behind that put his money where his mouth was because people challenged him. And then you bring up John Gruden. Colin Kaepernick told you years ago and actually took a stance to say to the NFL and to its fans and to all of us, stop, listen to what's going on. If it wasn't for the pandemic, LA, I don't know if we would see it to this day. And I think that people would still be trying to, look down upon Colin Kaepernick, to be honest with you.
And just plug for him. I mean, his documentary, Colin in Black and White with Ava DuVernay airs at the time of this broadcast tomorrow, the 29th, where he gets into all of that stuff. And it really is profound, man. Like it really this is some kind of Negodamus he gets, because he put that thing out in 16, and here we are now still dealing with these things, and the Gruden thing comes out, and it only just sort of cements. It's almost like the Jordan thing. We all knew, if we're in the midst, and the reporters, you've been in the business, that we knew that Jordan was sort of a jerk and that kind of thing. We reporters knew it. If you were around it, you knew the whole Jordan, all that kind of thing. But when it came out, with that whole Jordan documentary and all that kind of stuff, it's like, welcome to the party. So we already knew John the Grudens and those guys were already who they were. It's just everybody now who either wants to pretend like they're appalled or were naive and they're appalled. This is the NFL. Like, what's the surprise that you have that you shouldn't have? This is the NFL. There's nobody in those rooms, Trevin, that looks like you and I. So why would anybody be surprised of any kind of conversations? Whether it be DeMaurice Smith with the Michelin tire lips that Gruden said, or anything else, the Michael Sam thing. Why would anybody be surprised at this point that really understands it?
Well, there's no surprise. And kudos to the NFL franchises that have black men and black women at high executive levels. So because it is happening, it's just not happening as quickly as it should. I think there should be more black NFL head coaches and given opportunities. But you can say that about any sport in any realm at this point in time. And for those people who are listening, if you think this is strictly a black or white conversation, it's not. It's a people conversation. And I think that with the pandemic, what that did was stopped everything in its tracks. And all of us as people got to see how other people are being disrespected. So I think that it's time for us, and I'm hoping that the NFL is put to the fire. Their feet are put to the fire, to whereas they have to, look at the things that are going on and say, no, this enough is enough. But again, that's a business, and that's a business that has certain owners, and the certain owners look a certain type of way. So they may not, and it's not an excuse, but they may not understand black culture. They may not understand Latino culture. They may not understand Asian culture. And it's not an excuse for them to continue to handle things the way that they handle it. It's just a call to them to recognize Roger Goodell. Remember, he works for the owners. Right. It's not like he's there for players. He is there for the league and for the owners. They're going to protect their interests. And believe me, it's funny to watch a lot of people walk around of different ethnicities and different backgrounds and seeing the jerseys that they're wearing. And it's like, wow. But it's a good thing too, because it means that they're not seeing color. They're seeing that individual. They're seeing that performance. They're seeing that professional who goes to work and puts it in there and gets and produces. So out of respect for that, they're wearing that jersey.
And to your point, and to your point, Trevin, I mean, I'm in Durham, North Carolina. I see more Duke than Central. I mean, really? Like, I mean, in terms of the brothers, like in terms of black folks, I see more Duke than Central. I went to Charlotte and covered some stuff there. I see more University of Charlotte than Johnson C. Smith. Like, what,
Well, I'm glad. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'm glad you said that, because that's why organizations like the HBCU Pro Sports Media Association are in existence, so that the HBCUs can start to get more exposure, and not just exposure when you're the hot item, or you're the in, or you're the in thing, or you're what's everybody's talking about.
Or it was a shooting at the campus. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. So the HBCU Pro Sports Media Association, which you are a part of, is in existence just for that, so that we can help brothers like yourself, sisters who are doing their things as far as covering HBCU sports, whether it be someone who matriculates through college and is now in the professional ranks, or if it's, just the teams that you said. Like you said, you'll see more Duke than North Carolina Central. I'm not mad at that. It's just that now people need to have their eyes open, and the HBCUs need to get more exposure, and it's on us. It is our responsibility.
That's right.
And I will use that word responsibility to champion getting HBCUs the recognition and exposure that they deserve, and not on a short-term basis. This is for the long haul.
Right. If you're just joining us, talking with Trevin A. Jones here on the BASN News Radio Show, WCOM, WCLM, Big Mind Entertainment, and of course the BASNnews.airtime.pro. Trevin, we just to quickly, if we can, because I know you're short on time, if we can just kind of follow up on the tree part of it. I was talking to AD Drew, one of our colleagues, about a prime or an Eddie George or someone like that that may not be around enough to have those assistants to be a part of that tree. You know, that go on and do great things because they coach under those guys, but the impact may be there. So is the tree more important in HBCUs? And not even just guys who played, like Reggie Theus didn't play at an HBCU, but of course he's running one. So is the tree more important, or the impact of the person that leaves the legacy in that institution at HBCU more important?
I'm going to kind of straddle the fence on that one. And the reason I'm going to do that is this, and I'm glad you brought it up. Deion, Eddie George, Reggie Theus brought exposure to the HBCUs, whether you want to admit it or not. Deion Sanders with Jackson State is doing an incredible job. And when you think about it, his son Shador is the quarterback for a team that is 7-1 and on top of the SWAC. And matter of fact, on top of most HBCU college football polls throughout the country. I say that to say this. Last week, a coach that I know very well, that actually I do play-by-play for Howard University football, and this has been my 7th year. My very first year, this coach was the coach of Howard University, and I'm talking about Gary Flea Harrell. Now, Coach Flea played in the pro ranks. He also played in college football at Howard University. Last weekend, he was the assistant. He was the head coach of Jackson State while Deion is recuperating. They won. This week, he's the coach of Jackson State once again while Deion is still recuperating. I would bet that Coach Harrell is getting more exposure now in these 2 weeks at Jackson State, not because he's still at an HBCU, but he's at the HBCU that Deion Sanders was at as the head coach, and the medium is following Deion Sanders. So when you talk about Eddie George, you talk about Deion and Reggie Theus, who's college basketball, coming in, think about it this way. They are bringing exposure. Now, on the flip side of that, and the exposure that they bring can give whatever assistant coaches they have, even if the assistant coach has one time been a head coach at the college ranks, the exposure, more exposure than he had before. Now, what I want to say is this. I don't have a problem with Coach Eddie George or Coach Deion Sanders or Coach Reggie Theus as long as you respect that H that's in HBCU. Because H stands for historically black colleges and universities. The H stands for history. As long as you understand the history upon the institution and the conference and the platform upon which you are standing, and then you can still get exposure for those coaches that haven't gotten it, that is awesome work. But if you have that you're the head of that program and you're not respecting that H in HBCU, that's where the problem comes.
Yeah, I guess I would. My question too would be, that's good and bad because as an assistant coach is filling in for Deion, if he struggles, or when Deion leaves and say an assistant takes over and they struggle, then is that a setback for HBCUs in that particular template? If the template is that Deion, if I'm saying the template is that Deion brings the exposure, so hey, he leaves and he's probably gonna leave, like you and AD say, after his kids leave, so he leaves, and then you got an assistant in that play, then the expectations are got to be super high. So is that a situation where that's a bad thing in terms of that splash, or do we need to go back to, okay, well, Deion was there We need to have a tree of black coaches that can get to perform at a high level under a Deion or Eddie George or like I mentioned, a Reggie Theus.
Well, I'm going to say it to you this way. No, because it will only be hurtful to HBCU football or basketball or what have you if you don't know it right now. If you already understand the background of HBCU football or basketball, you're already a fan. You already know what goes on. These coaches that you're speaking about, Dion's not doing it alone. He has coaches. The assistant coaches that he has are some awesome assistant coaches, and I just
Right,
mentioned.
he's a CEO, really.
Right, exactly. So if Eddie George is doing the same thing at Tennessee State, then kudos to them. The only people that will be surprised once these coaches leave these programs, and if the programs should not be as successful, will be the people who didn't know HBCU sports to begin with. So I don't see it as anything that will be setting. When you say use the term set back, no, it won't set back. HBCU programs are moving forward. HBCU institutions are moving forward. Basketball, football, baseball, volleyball, lacrosse, everything is soccer moving forward. So no, when these coaches come in, they'll get to shine, and the program will get even more of a shine. But once they leave, the coaches will take over because we've been doing it for years, for hundreds of years now. So no, it won't hurt us.
Let me real quick 2-part question for you. I'll let you go and bring in Mike Patton. Rumors about Howard leaving to go to another conference. If you've heard that, again, if that happens, we've been talking about a death sentence to the MEAC. They lose Howard, you're down to 5, and then you go from there. And big ups to Howard. You guys played really well at Norfolk State and Coach Oldham. So it was a great game, having to be there. But if they leave, that the impact of that, and then when I look at the mid majors and the majors in our HBCU Pro Sports Media Association top 20, I have nothing to do with A&T on the major poll. I don't think they deserve to be in there, or Alabama A&M. And I thought that Norfolk State should be a little higher. And then I thought that on the mid-major poll that Fort Valley State should be higher. And it's interesting that the dilemma at the top of the mid-major with Albany State, Bowie State, and Langston is the problem, I would say, is that they're so good. Everybody seems to be splitting first place votes, and it makes it difficult to see who's actually number one.
Right, and that's a good point. Urban Media Today, Urban Media Today Radio, and UrbanMediaToday.com. Urban Media Today Radio, I have a podcast on there. Matter of fact, we'll be recording tonight. It comes on every Saturday morning. But to answer your question, that's why we at Urban Media Today just have one poll. And we call it the top 10. But actually, if you go to UrbanMediaToday.com and look at our poll, we actually rank 20 teams. And for the first time, and I challenge all of you or anyone listening, go to our poll on UrbanMediaToday.com and look at the 20 teams. There's only one team in there that has a losing record. A lot of people don't rank HBCU football that way because they say once you get past 10, there's teams with losing records. Well, this year, there are at least 20 teams that still have winning records 8 weeks into the season. So I'm loving that. And that's why when you made the comment earlier, will HBCU football, be set back if a coach leaves? No, we're moving forward. I like the parity. And the reason I say that, if you look at Division II, if you want to call it Division II, well, it is Division II. Savannah State's only lost one game. I mean, Langston is an NAIA school in Oklahoma. On our poll, they're ranked number 6. And they're ranked number 6 at 7-0 because you still have Jackson State in front of them. You have Norfolk State in front of them. You have Prairie View in front of them. You have Alcorn State in front of them. So it's just the teams are that good, and the records are reflecting it, and I'm loving to see that. So now my question is, should we be playing those pay-for-play games in the beginning of the season when you can still see a good record 8 weeks into the season without so many?
Yeah, and you're right. I mean that's what it boils down to, is that if you have so many, and then I mean once you break it down, because you're a part of the HBCU Media Association vote, that we have the two different tiers. And AD and I were talking about, well, when you get down to so and so, especially in the major poll, you get 9, 10, and 12, they're all under 500. So for me, I need to take who's had quality wins and quality losses. And then that kind of determines where everybody needs to be. I mean that's the only way you can do it, really.
I like it, and I'm gonna say kudos. I'm gonna say, what's up, Mike? How you doing? I know Mike's coming on in a minute.
Yep, Mike's coming on.
And Yawnie, your guest earlier, kudos to her as well. I see Tony. Tony's coming in a minute too. I wanted to say first and foremost, before I even address that Yawnie hit the nail on the head. And I want to say with the topic that she was speaking about, men go through that as well. There are men that go through that abuse, believe it or not, physically and mentally. And you don't have to be a certain type of man. I'm talking about men, period, go through that
Not
as well. So
I don't have no muscles,
yeah,
but yeah,
nah, any type of man.
Yeah.
They go through that too. Man, it is awesome to see what's going on in the HBCU college football realm today. It is just awesome. I'm loving it. Again, we do the split polls on the HBCU Pro Sports Media Association because a point was made that you get more exposure. So the smaller schools get more exposure if you have a ranking just for them, whereas the mid majors get the exposure that they normally get plus a little bit more. And the basis, as we alluded to, Tony being a member as well. Mike, if you're covering anything in Black college sports, you need to become part of the HBCU Pro Sports Media Association as well.
Tennessee State now.
Yep. Oh, there you go. Okay, yep. The Tiger, red, white, and blue. But the exposure is key. So that's why we do with the HBCU Pro Sports Media Association to two separate polls so that people can see. You know what? And I'm not going to talk too much longer. People really still don't know that there are HBCUs out there, and they don't know who is an HBCU and who isn't. So that's why we would do the poll, the rankings. We do that way with the HBCU Pro Sports Media Association. Urban Media Today, always done it with just one poll for all of Black college football, so we can crown one champion. So we'll continue to do it that way, but doesn't lessen anything else anybody else is doing.
Well, listen, before you go, just allow people to know how to follow. Not just the HBCU, but the urban media stuff that you do, because again, you got four brothers up here, and you add AD and everybody else. I mean, we're all in collectively trying to work towards the same goal, and we're all certainly keeping it on the Black and different angles in different situations. So let people know how they can follow you, how they can see what's going on with you. And thank you, as always, Trevin, for your time and your expertise, sir.
Oh, thank you. I'm blessed, and I'm honored to even be on the show, and even for you to allow me to speak on your platform. You're doing an excellent job. HBCU Pro Sports Media Association. Go to hbcuprosportsmedia.com, and you can check that out. That's what I really want everyone to go to that website, especially if you're in the media and you're covering HBCU sports. Definitely check us out. LA is a member. I know Tony's a member, and I hope they don't mind me saying so. Hopefully Mike will become a member soon too. I think it'll be worthwhile. Me, it's simple. Ice Code Alpha on Twitter. You can check me out there. You can also check me out with the email with tajumt.com, urbanmediatoday.com, and Urban Media Today Radio. Check out the radio station. There's some music driven. We have podcasts every Saturday morning, which my podcast will be on there, Urban Media Today Talk Sports. Even Ty Miller from the Power News Radio Network, he does a show called Black College Football Weekly. That actually airs on our network at 12 noon, right before kickoff. And he's also a member of the HBCU Pro Sports Media Association. So if you're listening and your ears are perking up like, yo, what is this HBCU Pro Sports Media Association? It's something you need to check out. So that's it for me. Thanks, LA. I appreciate the time, man. And I can't wait to hear what your guest got to say. I know Tony has plenty of knowledge to share, and I know Mike got it going on as well. So I can't wait.
Both of them. I mean, they both. One's older than I am, like a zillion years old. And I just tease. I could tease Tony. He always, And then one's a young buck. And either way, I appreciate you coming on. And Trevin, we'll coordinate our time so we can get you on more with you and AD and everybody else that we have on the association. But I concur with you. I think it's very powerful of what we do and what we say. And folks that look like us and some of our sisters, it's a beautiful thing. It's a total beautiful thing. And I really appreciate you, sir.
I appreciate you as well. And I want more sisters involved. So ladies, definitely reach out. Thanks a lot for having me, gentlemen. And I can't wait to enjoy the rest of the show.
Appreciate you, man. Stay on if you can. If you will want to bring in my good friend patiently on the line. He just adjusts on the fly because he's the man, and he can do that. Of course, the Sports Awakening .com and touring the AFC South. He is Mike Patton. And Mike, always good to have you on, man. Hope you and your babies are good, your fam, and appreciate your patience, sir.
Yeah, thanks for having me on again, man.
Absolutely. Tony T. Mac McClean on the line as well from BASN Newsroom, the editor-in-chief. Don't know anybody better who can edit and do the things that he does. And I mean, I'm being honest about that. Mike, when you look at the teams that are left, or not left, but the teams that are jockeying for the best, right? That word, the best in the NFC. Everybody's talking about Dak and Dallas. Couple tough games, but really a cupcake schedule. Look at the Rams and what they played. Arizona's still undefeated. You got the Bucs doing it, what they doing with Tom Brady, so on and so forth. Just strictly on the NFC side, before we get into some of the stories, who is the best team in the NFC?
Oh, man.
Based on those factors, I mean, really.
Honestly, a team that's not getting much respect right now, I'm going to give them their flowers today. The Arizona Cardinals are the best team in the NFC.
I mean, really?
Nobody talks about it, though.
This is the NFL, Mike. They haven't lost a game. They beat everybody in front of them. Why wouldn't they be, right now, after 7 games, the best team going into the game tonight of this broadcast, the best team in the NFL? I don't understand why it's a conversation.
I can tell you. Because last year or the year before, everyone thought, like, okay, they're 4-0, they're 5-0. Okay, they might be for real. And all of a sudden, they lost all their games and stuff like that. So everyone keeps waiting on that other shoe to drop, but it hasn't dropped yet. Now, I will say, J.J. Watt out for the year with a shoulder injury, that hurts. But this team is just better than what it was previously, even when people don't like their coach, even when people don't like the players, their system, anything like that at all, they still keep chugging along. They're still undefeated. And I think they'll be undefeated after tonight, too.
But wasn't this defense, or you can correct me, wasn't this defense pretty good before JJ? I mean, they had their hiccups, but Chandler Jones was still there, and they still had those linebackers inside that were playing pretty good, and Buddha in the secondary. Weren't they pretty good before JJ was there?
I mean, they were okay, but the thing is, they went out and added another pass rusher to go along with J.J. Watt. Also, they have 2 young linebackers. They had the kid they drafted from Clemson, and then they went out and drafted another guy. So now those 2 are the inside linebackers. Plus, you have a veteran linebacker you can bring in off the bench that can actually play just as well as they can. So this year, they're deeper and they're better. And Vance Joseph, you got to give that man some love with how he got dismissed in Denver, which I thought was horrible. Now he's making this Arizona defense one of the best in the NFL, and I gotta give him his props. I mean, look at the corners. Does anybody know who their corners are? I mean, Patrick Peterson's not there. Nobody knows who their corners are, but they're still doing their thing out there, and the front seven is making it happen.
Yeah, schematically, he's getting it done. AFC wise, you look at, and listen, I already said there's something about this Bengals team because they actually not only beat my Steelers, but they beat them at home. I'm 51. I can't remember the last time the Bengals beat the Steelers, and let alone at home. So that, in a nutshell, puts them to me in that category of they're for real. And then, Lamar, to me, I think we'll get to MVP later. To me, is the MVP of the league because of if you take him off the team, Baltimore is less than 500. So Lamar's my MVP. But anyway, so you got him, you got Cincinnati. I wipe out Cleveland with Baker. You have Buffalo and what they've done. And then you have a situation where you got Tennessee that's running the football. They beat, Kansas City and Buffalo. And then Kansas City. So when you look at the landscape of the AFC, everybody's saying, well, don't count KC out because it's still only 7 games. You got 10, 11 games left or whatever the case may be. They can come back. And then you look at the rest of the league. Who's the best team you think, record-wise or not, in the AFC?
Okay. Well, if you look at all the teams, they definitely all have holes. That we all can admit.
Right.
However, just taking a look at the teams, the landscape in the NFL, I'll still roll with the Buffalo Bills for right now. I mean, the Buffalo Bills have an outstanding defense. True enough, Derrick Henry did his thing against them. But who does he not do his thing against? Ironically, he didn't do his thing against Kansas City, which they still won the game.
But they didn't need him, though. They didn't need him to do his thing, though.
Really, they did. They really didn't. The defense was playing out of control. But I'll say the Buffalo Bills because they have all the weapons. They definitely have a stout defense at all different levels. They have a star. So I'll say if they get a consistent running game, there's nobody that's going to touch them because honestly, if they continue running the football with Josh Allen and that's their running game, that's not going to end well.
And that's the thing too, Mike, just to follow up. Josh Allen, that's the reason why not only I think because of the team that Lamar is number one, but the fact that I don't know if Josh Allen is going to finish the season. He's too big and too slow. He takes too many hits. He's a big dude, right? But he takes a lot of hits. So I don't know if he's going to finish as the Buffalo quarterback for this team to lead them to the promised land. Whereas Lamar has learned to run and he's been accurate with the ball and he's certainly elusive, more elusive than Josh Allen, that he'll finish a game and finish a season. Josh is taking these Ben Roethlisberger hits. I don't know if he'll finish the season.
I'll say this: he takes more hits in the pocket, I would say, than he does when he gets outside the pocket. He's not a shifty guy, but he is fast. He definitely can run. Lamar, on the other hand, takes too many shots that he shouldn't really take, where he could slide or anything like that. That concerns me there with Lamar, but I mean, Lamar's been doing this since forever. So, and Josh Allen, one hit, and it definitely could be curtains for him because, he doesn't necessarily slide at the right times either, and he's not as elusive as Lamar is. So Lamar can kind of avoid more of those hits than what Josh can. But Josh is fast though. Let's not get that twisted. He is fast. He can run.
Yeah, he's I guess fast for a 6'5", whatever he is, and Roethlisberger size type guy.
Roethlisberger has never been as fast as Josh Allen.
No, but I mean he's a big Roethlisberger type kid, right? Yeah. Right. So before I go to Tony, let me ask you this, because you and I, and T came in late. You and I talked about how the NFL was going to end these emails. Like, something's coming out of this. Gruden is just on the surface. We know he's the middle-aged white guy that they feel like. I mean, just to be real about it. So now to the direction of the owners, Roger Goodell says, hey, we're not going to provide Congress. The two of you talked about Congress. Congress wants these emails, and they're saying no. It's going to put people on Front Street. I'm paraphrasing. And so if that's the case, Mike Patton, if they're not going to provide, they're not going to give up the real deal of what was said, how it was said, when it was said, this thing to me won't get fixed. So what comes out of the NFL deciding that they're not going to provide these specific emails to Congress and to the public?
Well, one thing that you did mention as well is that Roger Goodell did say that these emails and that he talked about the emails, but he said for the, I guess, protection of the people or the anonymity of the people. And the people came back and said, no, we don't care about that. We want those emails out. So right now, I can imagine Roger Goodell is on the bat phone talking to the main core owners and trying to figure out what do we do next. Because I can tell you right now, he probably doesn't know.
But I'm just wondering what they can really say. Like, what if the public is saying, yeah, we want to know what's going on. If Congress is really going after Mr. Snyder specifically, and I heard, then NFL just needed. I mean, this is why they always fall short in PR to the NBA, because they do this stupid stuff where they don't want to acknowledge stuff. I mean, Tony and not Tony specifically have written stuff on guys who concussion, and the NFL would just say, well, they concussion, let's just wait them out till they die. I mean, that stuff is out there. So if they're doing that on concussions, Mike, what good comes out of them trying to hide the fact that we know there's a bunch of bigots out there that says some stuff on the email? Just put it out there and let the chips fall where they may. I mean, you're a gazillion dollar industry. I'm being facetious. You're going to get another owner anyway. So if somebody's got to sell it, somebody's going to buy it. What's the problem?
Well, the thing is, they're afraid of it all falling down, the castle all falling down. So that's the biggest thing they're afraid of. Secondly, they're thinking themselves as well as the owners, thinking that, hey, if we give up this one person and cooperate, then any other time it's going to put all these other owners on notice as well. And a lot of these owners, let's be quite frank, they don't want to be put on notice. They don't want to be put out there. They don't want anybody too much in what they consider their business as well. But, if really one move could actually make this where the NFL could actually be like, okay, cool, we'll give you what you want. That move would be attacking the antitrust. If you do that, I bet you the NFL will sing the high heavens.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. And T and I, we've been saying, take that antitrust away, and they be whistling Dixie. I mean, that's a whole different ball game when you do that. To your point, and T, wouldn't it be something? Wouldn't be surprising, but wouldn't it be something if Jerry Jones was on that email or something? Yeah, he's Mr. Whatever, and all this stuff. And wouldn't it be even shocking, right? That the Steelers, the Rooneys were up there. That would be, the Mr. Diversity, Mr. Tomlin for 14 years, Mr. This, and they would be on the email. So that just gets me thinking, T, that something's going on. On top of the fact that they just don't want their dirty laundry, there's some people up there on those emails, T, that could really blow this thing hypocritically out of the ballpark.
Well, I'll just repeat what I had said before. If you think that little Chucky is on an island out here with his thinking, allow me to uninsert your head from your behind and allow the light of reality in this. And again, this is not just the NFL. It's professional sports. The NFL more so because they always play that holier than thou sort of thing. So no, this is uh, antitrust would help, but I need to hear the word subpoena. Then we can then we can go from there, because remember, this is I could be wrong, this is a federal investigation, is it not?
Yeah.
I'm not for sure if it's
That's the thing. I think I'm not sure. See, I was afraid to say it because my guessing is if it's federal, then they probably would have pulled a subpoena by now. I'm just thinking that, but see, it's one of those things where I think if it lingers on and you throw in the antitrust, then you have subpoena power, because in many ways, this is, again, we're going to showing our ages show my age a little bit. To me, it's very, very similar to the Nixon tapes from the Watergate days back in the day.
But
And now it was now again with Nixon, it was an obstruction of justice and what have you, but it's on the same lines in the sense because here's the thing. The NFL with all this billions and whatever, they technically they are a non-profit organization, which exactly.
Mike is brought up, right?
Exactly. So they have some wiggle room in the sense when and how they can be dealt with and who can deal with them. But see, again, once you do the antitrust thing, once you hear those antitrust, then you're talking about subpoena or what have you. And see, let's face it, if this plays out the way we think it will be, I think we all know who's going to be the first witness.
Right. And it's really disturbing, Mike, when you look at it from the angle and the standpoint that Tony brought up, because this is the same league, and really this is the same society that will get upset with Dave Chappelle and whatever, right? But we not upset with domestic violence and things of that nature. And the NFL is a microcosm. Now the NHL is dealing with their own domestic violence stuff, right? They're dealing with their own thing. But the NFL has these issues all the time. Like even before they get to the NFL, like the Virginia Tech kid, Mike, the freshman kid that killed a transgender kid and all that suspensions that's going on. NFL has this stuff come up all the time, and they bury it. The NBA, which we'll get to, is not perfect, but the NFL buries it. And I don't understand, if you're number one outside of the world of soccer, right? And they call it football and all that. If you're number one, why do you bury it, Mike? Take it, address it, and go forward. But they won't do that. They're so reactionary, the NFL. They're right. Reactionary. And I think, Mike, it's because you and I love the game. Tony and I love the game. We're also reporters, right? So we have to have a certain dynamic to it. But then there's people out there that go, well, yeah, that happened with Michael Sam, and yeah, this and that. But I still want to see my team win the game. And so maybe that's the angle, Mike, that's the reason why the NFL is not being held to the same type of standards of other sporting and other societal situations, because they're Joe Blows from wherever that go, well, yeah, that's bad for that, but I got fantasy football, and I need to be in first place in that. Is any validity to that at all, Mike?
Oh, there's a bunch of validity to that. Honestly, the thing I think with the NFL, what they're going to do, they're going to sit back and let all the storylines happen. They're going to talk about all these great things that's happening. Next month, they're going to talk about My Cause, My Cleats. That'll be I don't think that's next month. That's in December. They're going to let all these other stories happen and basically kind of visually try to make you forget about this story right here. What the thing is to us, we have to continue to bring that story up, continue to let people know about it, continue to keep people engaged in that conversation. Because if we don't, the NFL is good for burying a good conversation and putting fluff or trying to pull the wool over our eyes like we can't see what's going on.
And I have to ask this to the both of you. I'll stay with you, Mike, because I know someone that we both know. I know we both know him because we dealt with this particular person. I won't say the name. If you want to ask off air, you certainly can. But everything you said, Mike, makes sense. Okay, so NFL is wrong. The NFL this and that, but we got to hold them accountable. But yet, Mike, if I ask you something about Tennessee State or the SEC or the Tennessee Titans, you got some inside scoop, which means that you're still getting your job done, which means you're still sitting at the table and you're still getting the information. Tony, the same thing. So why, as black reporters, male and female, in particular, male in this particular case, that we feel that we have to acquiesce to the NFL? You're not, Mike, you're not acquiescing to the NFL because you got your insiders. Because I can ask you, hey, Mike, what about this? You're like, hey, man, look out for this and this and coming up on my show. You got your inside. Tony's got his inside in baseball, whatever the case may be. So if we have our inside and yet we still associate and know some people, probably a better term, that once they sit at the table and they don't do what they need to do and they make excuses for the NFL, why? Because you guys are two examples of you don't have to, kiss any butt and still get your job done. That's an issue, Mike. Elaborate on that.
Well, the thing I look at it is the further you get in, the harder it is to continue to be yourself sometimes. In some people.
That's true.
Because you're in there, you're doing your job, you're doing what they ask you to do, and you get to know certain people and know certain things. And sometimes you can get a little too close to a situation, and you're like, okay, do I really come out with this? Do I do this? But the hardest thing I would say to a lot of people is to continue to hold on to yourself as you get deeper and deeper into something. And that's, I think, what happens to a lot of different people as they continue to evolve and grow. There's nothing wrong with evolving and growing, but you also still have to remember who you are and where you are and the world that we live in as well. It's kind of like different dynamics that all come into one person that's becoming you. So knowledge of self, along with knowing the knowledge of doing your job, doesn't always equate as you move up the ladder. And that's what I could give in terms of an answer.
And Tony, I mean, again, you know what I'm talking about. Like we talk about these people and we deal with these people, but you're always true to yourself. You're always I know you forever, and you're always gonna be true to yourself. You're always gonna stand on your convictions and things. But then you got some people again that we're all connected with, or we know, and they just decide that they want to sell out. I thought an interesting a point to that to the both of you, but Tony, you can respond first. And Stephen A. Smith was talking about Mike Tomlin and how Mike Tomlin was upset and disrespected, and Stephen A. was talking about how people talk about my resume, and he went over his resume, and then he said they call me Screaming A, and I wonder why. Well, you screaming. Right, so you are screaming. So my point is that if you're giving the people what they want, and then you go, well, why do they think that? Then what are we discussing?
Well, see, here's the thing, and I've talked with you and Mike and other people about this that happens in our industry, and I'll use Stephen A as a perfect example. When Stephen A was writing for the Philadelphia Inquirer, he was by far the best NBA beat writer in the country. Not Peter Vesey, not Mark Stein or some of the other folks that they try to tell you. It was Stephen A. Smith. He had all the insight and everything, and he was must-read TV. There used to be a site back in the day called Sports Pages where you could go to any sports section in the country and you could read basically that sports section. And because of his coverage of the NBA, he clearly was the best NBA, national writer. And, you've seen him rise up in that. But what winds up happening a lot of times, and you see it whether you go from the print to TV or from radio to TV or what have you, you go from being a journalist to being a personality. And my thing has always been, and I think we all say this, whether it's Mike, Trev, LA, I'm a journalist first. And I always will consider myself a journalist. If a personality thing comes through, it's like, yeah, I guess so, whatever. But I would, to me, being considered a quote unquote personality would be like spitting in my throat. I'm a journalist. I'm a journalist because the journalist is going to report. I mean, journalist is part of media, and media is part of a Greek word that talks about giving information. End of the day, our job is to disseminate information,
right?
Good, bad, or indifferent. And unfortunately, now that the good, bad, and ugly of the media can be the internet, because see, now all the four major leagues, NBA, NHL, the NFL, and Major League Baseball, they all have their own individual websites. They all have their individual YouTube pages and everything like that. And on the surface, that's great because there's more information. We're in an information society. But unfortunately, what winds up happening, and you see it, and you're seeing it more so now, is like, look, a lot of these leagues, to coin a phrase, Joseph Goebbels ain't got nothing on a lot of these leagues and the people who run them, in the sense of putting out the spin. They are going to do anything and everything to give their side of the story. They're going to always put a positive thing on that. And again, it's not surprising that you always want to put a positive spin. But what happens is when there's something that there's blatantly not a positive that can come out of it, that's where there's a problem. The fact that story with the Blackhawks sat for 12 years, you can't tell me that there isn't an NHL beat writer or a local beat writer that didn't know of this story. We've seen, and this thing with the emails as well. You know that someone knows what the real story is, but they've been told to, because they want to keep their seat at the table, to sit on it. We had a mutual NFL writer for us years ago, and has been on several of our shows over the years. And one of the things he's, when quote unquote controversial stuff would come out about the NFL, he would always say,
I know you're talking about.
You can't go against it. You can't go against the family. And right. I'm like, what are we talking about? The Corleones here? Or are we talking about the NFL?
We have a current. I don't want to,
There's a lot. I mean, Mike, I know you probably know a few folks as well, whether it be on a national level or a local level. There's always going to be folks that that basically will kowtow to whatever. And again, it's a credibility thing. And see, let's just come around and say it. We are 3 black men. If anybody hadn't noticed that in the last couple minutes. Anything and everything we do is always going to be scrutinized even more so.
Right.
Good, bad, or indifferent. And more than 9 times out of 10, if it's negative, they're going to play up the negative more than anything else. And again, this is not saying this to be any victimization, whatever. It's just a fact. It's just a fact.
It's the reality of it.
And the thing is, when you realize the manipulation that goes on amongst all of these sports, whether it be college sports or professional sports, Lord knows that there's a whole lot of stuff that goes on the college level that could fill up a few books along the way as well. But the thing that folks always need to be reminded is that you've sort of got to look outside of stuff at times. Right. That's all. And again, it's nothing. You don't have to overthink it or underthink it, but just be aware that everything is not everything. And right. Again, you don't want to play it off like you have to be overly critical or of everything, but you just have to be aware of the information that you're being given. Because I'll steal a line from Eddie Griffin. They call it television programming because they're trying to program the way you think and the way you react. And now with the internet and all other things, that programming still exists. Maybe even more so now because there's so many more media outlets and ways of disseminating said information.
Yeah, and they call it the authentic in terms of all the analytics that goes into it, and I have to put this out there. So, Mike, Tony would always say, "Hey, it's important what you write, but make sure you get the facts right." All the spelling and stuff is in the grammar, the grammatical stuff is taken care of, but make sure you don't put no bullshit out there. Don't put no lies out there. And the second point I want to bring up, because I'm not like great reporters like you guys, but the second point I bring up is that I don't always tell you guys, and particularly you, Mike, is that your writing skills. And I tell people, hey, man, you need to check this article out in Sports Awakening, whatever the case, wherever you are writing. And if you send me an article, I send it out because of the respect. So, Mike, and I know we need to, I don't want to hold you because I want to get, an NBA and stuff. But if you write those things, right, and you put that out there, then there has to be some form of respect and sort of double downing, if you will, of what you write. You can't backtrack on stuff. And too much we see, not you, Mike, and certainly not T-Mac, is that we see people that look like us, who want to acquiesce or cow down or change our opinions. And to me, in the scheme of what we're talking about, the truth gets really lost. If you're telling me about Carson Wentz, you're covering the AFC, and you're telling me about him, and then someone says, well, Mike, I mean, Colts really like what you're doing, and and what you're writing, you can come with us. So you're gonna change that. So then that becomes a Mike Patton look himself in the mirror, or a Mike Patton sticking to the truth. And I think that's part of the problem. And I think there are people that we know, the three of us know, that don't always make that right call.
Can I say something?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah. There's always the biggest thing about writing is knowing how to word things as well. you can always get your point across without sounding like you're disrespecting somebody. You know, you don't always have to be nice and gentle and say this and say that. You can say some things about a player needing to be better, but not just downgrade and tear down the player as well. That's the one thing I think gets lost a lot in people writing sports or articles or anything like that. You can do both. You can say it in a nice way. You can do that.
And Mike, don't you get the feeling now that everything is confrontational too?
Very.
In some sense.
That's my point too, Mike. Like, then people change because it's so controversial and it's too confrontational that people change what they're believing and what they say and what they write.
You do have people that have, that are, think everything is coming at them or this, that, and the other. But I'm like, look, I'm going to write what I think. I'm going to put it the way I think it needs to be. If you don't like it, fine. If you do like it, fine. You can tell me all you want. I can decide if I want to respond to you or not. That's how it goes. And a lot of times the people that get mad at me and say this, that, and the other are the same people that are reading the next article I write.
There you go.
And to Mike's point, I remember him saying something. It might have been Tennessee State. It might have been someone. And he was writing something, and he was getting hit on Twitter real bad. Mike, I forgot what it was. And you were like, well, I seen it, but, this is the way it is. I can't. It might have been a Tennessee State story or a Tennessee Titans story that you wrote, but I know it was on Twitter, and you were getting hit pretty bad about it. And I've even experienced it, guys, real quick. When I was managing ESPN station, we had a morning show guy who's doing commentary. People call and say, that's the worst I've ever heard. Right, because they wanted to hear Mike and Mike or Colin Cowherd, right? So when they hear this local dude saying something that they don't like, then that's part of the issue. They don't hear Dumb and Dumber, I call them, Mike and Mike, or they didn't hear Colin or whoever the case may be. So now it's the dumbest, worst commentary in the history of the planet because you ain't hear you little boys from the masses, right, that control that whole environment. But again, I digress. Keep doing what you guys doing. It's really what the point is of all of that.
No, it's the thing. Look, reporting to me can be the easiest thing in the world because again, I go back to my old journalism teacher. Who, what, where, when, why, how.
That's right.
You do those 5, you won't get sued. You won't misquote anybody. And oh, by the way, you may actually write a pretty damn good story. Because because at the end of the day, when people are reading your stuff, those are the 5 things that need to be met. If you do all 5 of those, you are doing your job. But unfortunately, we do have, and again, it's not the majority. It's unfortunately that uglier side of journalism has gotten a little bit more play now because it's more about being first as opposed to being right. And I'll take being right. Cause see, I've told every writer, when I, even now, I have one rule. If you spell cat, K-A-T-T, that's on me. If you tell me that, that Beyonce is the commissioner of the NBA, we got a problem. Because
you better get it right.
Because at the end of the day, and see, especially because we dare to be Black men, we are, we are always going to be subject to be attacked in a sense. Right. But even with that, my thing has always been, if you do the 5, things that we just talked about, you ain't got to worry about it. Now, are some people going to get upset because you dare to tell the truth? Oh yeah. And you know what? Those are the easiest people to deal with. Like, I'm not going to lie for you.
Right. And with that being said and getting upset, and Mike, as I said, Tony taught me, get it right. he can fix the misspelled and all that kind of. Just get the information right was really the bottom line. You understand that, Mike, because you run your own thing. With that being said about getting upset, before we kind of quickly go on the field, Mike Tomlin, was he right in getting upset in terms of, how dare you demote me? Okay, I got the head shake, but I'm putting it out there. How for folks who can't see you, listen, for folks who can't see your head shaking, demoting him in a sense from the NFL, one of the story franchise, to USC, which is another story franchise, but certainly college. Did he get it right and upset, and why was he upset, in your opinion?
He got it 1,000% right, because the thing is, he said it right too. I mean, Sean Payton. I mean, I heard Stephen A. say, and Sean Payton. I mean, and Stephen A. was correct with the losing seasons, and talking about Andy Reid and the losing seasons as well. And they have never been asked, are they going to coach a college team? In every single year, Tomlin is on the hot seat about something. And, it isn't like he's always not successful. But I'm like, come on, man. Do y'all really need to ask him about USC in the middle of the season? I could see if this was Urban Meyer and you're asking him, because, he's susceptible to having a headache and saying, oh, I got to retire, and then pop up at USC. But do you know Mike Tomlin to be that guy?
Mike, let me just say this, because the both of you know this about me. I've been critical of Mike Tomlin. You both know I have. Without
a doubt.
Over the last few years, I've been critical. But I've been critical because, so you got Steelers, Yankees, you got Patriots, reluctantly, I hate them. And those two, like, it's Super Bowl or nothing. So I've been critical, unfairly for people to say with Tomlin in that regard. Like, it's about the Super Bowl. It's not about the playoffs, the Super Bowl. Having said that, the man Mike has never 0 times had a losing season. And the fact that, like you said, he's got a better winning percentage. He's never had a losing season. And he's on the same level in terms of wins, in terms of Super Bowls. Oh, by the way, he's tied with Andy Reid. Well, Andy Reid's got one with Philly, so Andy Reid's one.
No, he's got one.
Anyway, whatever. Anyway, he's up there with Andy Reid on that level in terms of the resume. So Sean Payton had 4 straight losing seasons. Andy Reid's Kansas City Chiefs are garbage this year. Nobody's asking them, is this the end of the run or whatever? Maybe local reporters, we don't know. But why you at? I don't have a problem with the reporter asking it because it came up with Carson Palmer's crazy behind and whatever. But it was the fact that he's on a hot seat and he's black and Roethlisberger's retiring, which means he can't win without Roethlisberger, right? And all of those factors, why wouldn't he be mad? I'd be pissed. He was better than I, because some crazy stuff would have came out of my mouth if they asked me that question.
I needed him to, after he got done talking, I wanted him to jump up and say, who wants some of Debo? And then walk off. That would have been great. That would have been great.
That's my bike, punk.
It's my job. This my field. I do this.
Or Mike, get mad because somebody was talking to this girl, aka Omar Epps, at because he damn sure looked like Omar Epps. Get mad at that. But I mean, really, that was a very disrespectful thing, and it really brings up to the fact, Mike, and then T after that this coaching tree, like Mike Tomlin, if he stopped his tree right now, of course he was under Tony Dungy in Tampa and all that kind of stuff, and
Leslie
Coach-
Frazier was too, by the way.
right, right. But he
Mhm.
played at William and Mary, coached at Cincinnati in college, then he went to the pros and all that kind of. So he has a coaching tree, but it's all about Belichick, Sean Payton, who has done nothing since whatever, and Andy Reid, who just did something. But they won't talk about the Mike Tomlin tree. They will not show him that respect in the fact that this brother has been successful at every level that he's been.
I got another name for you.
Okay.
Who's failing upward right now, and nobody's talking about him. He is the offensive coordinator for the Carolina Panthers. That'd be Mr. Joe Brady.
Yeah, Joe Brady.
Goes from a passing coordinator at LSU to an offensive coordinator for the Carolina Panthers. And right now, the Carolina Panthers offense is struggling. Like, just to be honest, I can't take credit for all of this because I heard this on a podcast called the Quick Blitz podcast, which is two women that cover the Carolina Panthers, Vashti Hurt and Nashina Quick. So they're talking about it, and they're like, why is Joe Brady not getting any heat? They're giving all this heat to Rule, but Joe Brady is the one running this offense, and it's like they're not giving him any heat. And I was like, man, they really are making a point here.
And Matt Rule, come on. What did he do in college?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wait, I'm going to say this. He did turn around a couple programs nobody's talking about, but other than that,
at this point,
yeah.
I think at this point in Carolina, they'd rather have Ja Rule than Mike Rule.
Really, and it just kind of full circles the whole thing where John Gruden can be on a beach somewhere for 50 years and get a job for $100 million, and Mike Tomlin, with his resume, has to prove why he won't take a college job.
And guys, I'm gonna count till 10 before someone starts to blame Eric Bieniemy for the Chiefs defense this year.
Oh, it's coming. It's coming. Hold on, Mike. It's coming because Eric Bieniemy offense is struggling now. Eric Bieniemy's offense is struggling. Eric Bieniemy's offense is turning the ball over. Eric Bieniemy's offense is not doing what they've done. Now it's Eric Bieniemy's offense.
That's what I was going to say.
I mean, really.
Oh boy.
But
I'm just trying to figure out this offseason.
But Mike, Kelly, what's his name in Dallas? They want to keep him around though.
Yeah, I mean the thing with me is I'm trying to figure out who's going to get the interview first this offseason. I probably know the answer, but we have Byron Leftwich in Tampa, and we have Kelly. I cannot remember his name for some reason, but anyway, the offensive coordinator for Dallas Cowboys.
Right.
Who gets
Kellen Moore?
Who gets the interview first?
He will.
You know what? Matter of fact, I'll trump that. Ed Edgerson.
What's that?
Ed Edgerson, the guy for LSU, who's about to lose his job. He'll get a look. He'll get a look before.
Have you heard about why he's getting fired down there?
Why?
Oh my God! Y'all ready for this?
It's funny. It's funny. It is.
He was messing with a cheerleader or something, right?
No. It gets better. Was of course he got paid. He won the offseason. He won that championship. He got the extension. At the same time, he was getting a divorce. So single man, a lot of money. Not a very good. It was a very interesting combination, and already know where I'm going with this.
You mean to tell me? Oh my God! So he's out there has something to do with that.
So he's out there. He's out there bringing women to practice. He's got kids going through drills. They're kids going through drills. He's hollering at people at the gas station. Like he ended up hollering at the wrong woman though. He hollered at one of the like either I think it's a state representative or somebody that's high at LSU or whatever. He hollered at his wife.
So
that man was down there wilding out with that money.
So Mike, that's not a surprise with Lane Kiffin and all the stuff that he's done in the past. But let me ask you 3 quick ones before we wrap up with NBA. Who gets USC and you think? Who get LSU? And who ends up leaving? Well, actually, I'm answering my own self.
Yeah. I think you're thinking about that. I think about the answer to the same question.
Yeah, I'm thinking Penn State's gonna. This guy's gonna end up in USC. But when you look at USC and LSU, who are going to be the coaches there?
Well, LSU I already know, and I just mentioned his name, Joe Brady. That's more than likely going to be the guy because the alumni want him, and the boosters want him, so he's going to fail upward once again. Let's see. Well, I would say he failed upward at LSU, but I mean he did go from passing coordinator to offensive coordinator in NFL, which that's a strange leap right there. But anyway, as far as USC, I'm not really sure, but there's one guy in LA right now that's actually covering football for Fox Sports. That'd be Mr. Chris Peterson that used to coach at Washington.
Wow.
That's the name to think about.
But, it's so funny because I mentioned Penn State is that Franklin hasn't really given them anything not to believe he's not leaving. And
he's from there. He's from that area too.
Right. And then, if you think about it, he's really a good guy. Like he came into Penn State under extraordinary circumstances where all the Joe Paterno and all that, he resurrects that thing. Who wins at Vanderbilt? He won at Vanderbilt, in the Southeastern Conference.
Hey man, don't say that too much around Vanderbilt folks because I don't still like him down here. Hopefully my wife's not listening. They don't really like him down here. Okay, but anyway, go ahead.
He won, and then who can resurrect a USC program who's been, Keyshawn and all that stuff below? So he would be the obvious choice, you would think. That's why I said with Penn State, who would succeed him if he's the obvious choice to go on and coach at USC?
Ooh, Penn State. If he ends up going out there, I don't know who would be the guy to step in there, to be honest. That's a good question. I have to think about that one. But as far as the USC one, I would suspect that they would make a call to Fox Sports and see if Chris Peterson is interested.
Wow. Talking with Mike Patton, Tony T-Mac, McClean. Mike, quickly, going to the NBA. 3
Can we
games.
please talk about the Chicago Bulls being 4-0?
Well, I was going to listen. I said to you, and I said to T that the Bulls would be better, and that the Bulls would.
They're playing the Knicks tonight,
and they would play better, and they're 4-0. Them in Golden State right now, right? So I'm not surprised at how they started. I think they'll be a middle echelon playoff team in the Eastern Conference. But let me ask you about Philly first. The fact is that Philly totally blew this. Mike, we know this. Tony, we know the man told you he wanted to be traded. He also told you he mentally not ready. So, and that's the latest part. He doesn't want anything to do with Philly. He said it. And this general manager just kind of said, well, we're going to get a first-round pick. And that
he had it. He actually had it. And he fumbled the bag this summer at the draft.
So he
fumbled the bag at the draft.
How does this team win? They're obviously trying to push him on the field, on the court, so he going to get his money. He's not going to want to be there. They're hoping he goes, you know what, just let me go. I don't care what you do, money or whatever. That's what they're hoping for. How does that work? And then when you look at the Eastern Conference, and really the NBA, to me, if Kyrie doesn't play, the East is open. If Kyrie doesn't play, it's Lakers, Golden State, and maybe another team. If Kyrie plays, it changes everything. So what about Kyrie with an old, overweight lover and James Harden? And I mean, he's still not in shape, man, for real. And then with KD, with Brooklyn, like the East just shapes up if Kyrie plays. So what say you about Kyrie playing, changing the landscape of the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference?
Well, I will say this: even if Kyrie plays, they still don't discover defense. So that's the first thing. But as far as the Brooklyn Nets, I mean, honestly, that puts them all in their pieces where they're supposed to be. That lets James Harden have an off night and continue to figure out how to get points without drawing fouls. Because he can't draw the same fouls anymore.
And they're not calling it now. So
right, exactly.
Shouldn't have been calling him in the first place, but that's a whole other story.
That's right.
Honestly, I think he figures it out. He just got to understand that, hey, this is not being called anymore. I need to go ahead and just do my thing, and the points will come. But the biggest thing for them is now he can't be the point guard of that team. He's got to be the point guard and the scorer. That's where the issue comes about, because he was content with being the point guard and the scorer. Now he's got to turn back on the scoring, and it seems like it's not there. It's almost like when a pitcher has a fastball and it's going 98, 99. They reach back for that 100, but they get 95 again. Same thing. And you did ask me about Philly and how can they win.
Philly, like what? I don't understand what's going to happen with them.
I got you. Just hear me out. I got you. Yep. And Embiid's knee is kind of bothering him. He really probably shouldn't be playing back-to-backs and things like that right now, too. But that's another story. But I know they can win. See, here's what they can do. They can walk out of the arena. They can go take a left. They can see that first gas station right there. Go in. Write down about 5 or 6 numbers and hand it in and pray that they win. That's how they can win.
Jeez.
They can win the lottery. They can't win games without being injured Embiid.
So they can't, and I knew, respect to T and the Knicks. I knew they were beating the Knicks. I didn't know they beat them 15 in a row. But the Knicks look. I said to both of you, the Knicks look really good. They just have to. They just have to be consistent in what they do, and they got the right coach. They got to be consistent. Right.
They upgraded at the positions they needed to, because they got rid of Reggie Bullock and brought in Fournier, who's playing like Olympic Fournier right now, by the way. I mean, they just, and then plus the point guard position, they had Elfrid Payton there, and they replaced him with Kemba Walker. I mean, it's instant upgrade, and they get Kemba Walker for peanuts.
Right.
Great manager right there.
So when you look at final question, when you look at Milwaukee, and I mean it's early, so everybody's gonna lose and lose big and lose small, whatever. But you look at Milwaukee, and then you look at a Golden State team that's playing really well now without Clay, and it ain't even Christmas yet. They'll get him back around Christmas. That guy, Wiseman, all those guys are coming in. Are those the teams that you look at, or are there other teams in the East and West that you would say? I mean, the Miami Heat. Again, I don't know why people sleep on Miami, but they're a good basketball team. Mm-hmm. So when you look at the East and you look at the West, what are the two teams you're looking at in the East and the West in terms of making those moves?
Well, you stole my thunder with the Miami Heat. The Miami Heat is probably the toughest team in the NBA. Look at their starting lineup. They got 2 Bulldogs in there, and PJ Tucker, and then you got Kyle Lowry. You add those to Jimmy Butler, who's a Bulldog himself. I mean, look at the weapons and the toughness, and then it moves Tyler Hero to being the 6th man off the bench. So he can just come in and just play, as opposed to come in and being dependent on to run the offense and score at the same time. So great pickups. I definitely am enjoying watching them. Another team I would say in the West. Let's see. A team in the West that might make some noise this year, and they're not fully complete yet. And I know they took a loss the other night. That would be the Memphis Grizzlies. You look at how Ja Morant is playing.
I was gonna say, oh man, you are
Jaren
on it. You are
got
on
Jaren
it.
Jackson Jr. He's hooping. You still don't have Dylan Brooks back, who is their defensive stopper. I agree they had a bad game the other night, but I think the Memphis Grizzlies, with that young talent that they have, will continue to get better and better. And you also got to remember that Bane is actually playing well too. He's another guy that they drafted as a sharpshooter out of TCU. Imagine if he's hitting shots, Jaren Jackson's hitting shots. Imagine how wide open that lane's going to be. Woo!
But
Man.
what about who has the biggest upside? LaMelo Ball or the kid in Memphis in terms of Durant? Who has the biggest upside? I mean, Durant seems like he's just gonna ball out. Like he's just gonna make Magic Johnson type plays, and Bello's gonna pass the ball like Mike. So who's the guys who's gonna have the more upside and is gonna have a more impact? Because they're both great players to me.
Really good question. I mean, right now, if this moment, I would take Ja. But I will say this: with Melo, he makes his team better. I mean, he makes guys that are limited look great. I mean,
Right.
I'll say this: nobody was talking about Miles Bridges before LaMelo Ball got there.
Right.
He gets there, all of a sudden, Miles Bridges explodes on the scene and is a way better player than what he actually could be on another team. He's an undersized 4-man, but he's hooping. And then also, I mean, you look at all the other different pieces on that team. He moves Terry Rozier off the ball so he can just focus on scoring.
Right.
You got just other guys that are, can fall more into their role, and he's basically the easy button on the floor for them. Ja, he's working on that. Ja's more of a scorer than he is an actual. He's a point guard, but he's more of a scoring mindset. Now I've seen Ja since he was a freshman at Murray State. So honestly, believe it or not, he didn't start at point guard when he was at Murray State his freshman year.
And the thing is too with him, with those two guys, Ja is averaging right now. It's early more assists.
30 points, 30
right, and
points.
more assists than Melo. But both Melo guys, I think, will be good. Final question to you, Mike, that came in. That was, how does, and they put in parentheses, if does Russell Westbrook adjust to the Lakers to make them successful?
Pretty easy. Russell Westbrook, I think what the biggest thing that Russell Westbrook can do is turn on the tape from the Olympics. Here's what I mean by that.
Shoot too much, man. He shoot and miss too much for me.
I'm not gonna go there with him on that. Because Russell Westbrook is gonna be Russell Westbrook. We can talk about that till we blow in the face. He's still gonna shoot the ball. But the thing I would say with him is bring the energy like he did on the Olympic team. Anthony Davis and LeBron James are going to be the focal points. It is what it is. But what he can do is he can change the game defensively with his energy and with his tenacity. If he can bring some of that and then also just play his role, which I think eventually will happen, there will be a pecking order. And I think the biggest thing for him getting his points will be him playing with the second unit a little bit more than what LeBron and AD would. That's where I think he'll get the majority of his points as opposed to being, the other. I think as the season goes on, he'll know when to defer and when to take his shots because, it just takes a while to learn. And then also look at that team. How many pieces are actually back from last year on that team? It's going to take a while for them to get together.
I just think that does he say, I'm not a starter, I'll come off the bench with Rondo or whoever and do that. Or do I
a point guard on that team that's better than he is?
I take my $40 million and do what I'm normally doing, which is just have lots of energy. I may miss shots, but I'm the the Energizer Bunny. I'm the energy guy.
I'll say this. I'll say this with him. Honestly, he's not shooting the ball as much as everyone would say he's shooting the ball, to be honest. I mean, the first couple games, he didn't really shoot the ball very much. He was trying to figure out the offense.
Right.
So, the last couple games, he's kind of had to because LeBron's been out. But when LeBron's in there, I think he's going to be third in the pecking order in terms of shots because I think, ultimately he's still trying to figure out his role. And secondly, I would say this. Los Angeles Lakers, will you please go ahead and put DeAndre Jordan on waivers? He can't move anymore. It's over. It is over. Start Dwight Howard. Go small with Anthony Davis as the backup. Call it a day.
Yeah. What's a couple of guys on that team that I think that may need to do that?
Now, I would say this, though. When Ariza comes back, they can really play good small ball. Because, I mean, as much as people talk about Ariza and how old he is and things like that, Ariza is always in good shape, always can play good defense, and he's always good to hit you a good couple corner threes, which is big for a LeBron James team.
Right. With it being said about the Lakers real quick, Lakers turning it around and how they do it real quick because I got an email from someone.
They need to buy in defensively. Defensively, they're not.
That ain't happening though, and Mike. That ain't. I mean,
it'll happen more.
They 50, man. They ain't trying to.
LA.
It's not going to happen like they're shutting down teams defensively all game.
20-point leads will blowing a few more 20-point leads will do it to you.
Yeah, I guess
they're
so.
They're going to have to learn the hard way. They're going to have to learn the hard way.
But Mike, you in your 30s, you 37, man. I mean, if somebody 37, I mean, come
on. I'm like this though. Here's what everyone gets caught up in. Everyone gets caught up in their age, and it's funny that people get caught up in their age because there's another team out there that's old that actually still plays well too. I'm gonna leave them alone because I'm really not getting into the age things. But what I'll say is this: you don't have to be young to play great defense. The Minnesota Timberwolves, they're young and they play horrible defense. Sacramento Kings, young, play horrible defense.
Orlando.
All you have to do is be able. Orlando, yes. All you have to do is be able to know each other's tendencies and positions and where you're supposed to be on the court. Vogel is not a horrible defensive coach. He might not be a great offensive coach, but he's a pretty solid defensive coach. And I think as the year goes on, I think they'll continue to learn each other. Now, I'm not saying Carmelo Anthony is going to be a defensive stopper, but he's going to at least be able to be in position to do some things better. I mean, honestly, I'll say this: in Portland, he was not awful defensively. That's what a lot of people missed. He wasn't awful defensively in Portland. He actually was in position. He actually took a few charges, blocked a couple shots. It was just right where he was supposed to be. It's all about him learning the people he's around. Once he learns the people he's around, he'll get better. Just like Dwight Howard will learn tendencies of other people too.
Right, I don't have a problem with Melo or anybody. It's just there's playing defense and wanting to play defense, and
trust me, like T-Mac said, blow a few more of those leads and they'll want to play defense already.
They better.
Playoffs. This team misses the playoffs. Everybody's going down. You know what's happening.
Shoot, they better. I'm a Sixer fan, so I don't like the Lakers or the Celtics, so.
So that's what it is. I'm kidding, man. I'm kidding.
It had to come to the surface. It had to come to the surface sooner or later.
I already said,
you can't hate the Sixers, the Celtics this year though. You can't handle them this year. I'm gonna give you two reasons. You can't help the Celtics this year. That'd be Ume Udoka and Nia Long. There you go. That's it, right there. You can't hate the Celtics because of those two. She was at the game when they played New York too, by the way. She was on the sideline taking pictures and everything.
Well, you know what? Brown is actually playing better than Tatum. So, we'll see.
I mean, I like Brown more anyway because he's a more all-around guy.
Right.
He
Right.
gives me more on both ends of the court. I like Tatum's offense, but boy, oh boy, when he said that when he came out of the draft, or when he was up for the draft, I compared him to Carmelo Anthony because he was very good offensively, very skilled. But on the defensive end, he just always lacks a little bit.
They ain't
Always
trying.
did.
Yeah, I'll leave that to the defense. Be last question: Colts, Titans. Who wins and why?
Ooh wee, man, I've gone back and forth on this one. I want to pick the Titans. I really do. I'm looking around. Media's not really talking about them. I'm gonna go with the Titans winning by about 3 points.
Okay, so I commit. Okay, so now you on you on record with the Titans. I mean, Carson Wentz has been playing well, so I'm sure you probably factor that in. I mean, he's been playing.
Yeah, he's not playing on 2 bum ankles this time.
Yeah,
He can actually walk.
No happy feet or anything like that. So you're going Tennessee by 3, 2017, something like that.
And I'll give it I'll say 26-23 or 30-27. There's going to be some points scored in this game. And also, I will say there will be some yards ate up on the ground in this game because you got 2 of the best running backs in the NFL, Jonathan Taylor, and of course, Derrick Henry.
And I don't think Taylor gets it as much credit as he
4'3" guy, 5'10", 220 pounds.
Right.
Man.
Yeah. He's a bad dude. Mike, I appreciate it. Before you go, let people know how they can follow you, reach out in all phases of your sports, sir. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, you can find me on Twitter at MikePatton82. That's MikePatton 82. You can find me on all listening platforms touring the AFC South each and every week. Of course, this week I had a fantasy football writer for The Athletic, Brandon Howard, on, kind of break down, give you tips, stuff like that. And also you can find me, of course, eventually at Sports Awakening. We're going under a little bit of construction now. Maybe come back at Sports Awakening, may come back at something different. Give you a little nugget there. But, a few other different places as well. Of course, the Nashville Voice, Tennessee Tribune, among others.
Mike, you do a phenomenal job, and I wasn't just saying that. I appreciate it, and keep doing what you're doing, man. We need you. We really do need your voice, and thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. You be careful, you and your fam, man.
All right, it's TSU homecoming weekend, so I'm definitely being careful.
All right, and I'm gonna hit you up. That's one of our reportings next week with Tennessee.
They're going for their 4th straight win. They've won 3 in a row and 4 of their last 5.
That's right. And they're looking.
Yep.
One of the things we didn't get into details with Mike having him on was about this taking off, or this load management that the NBA and even the NFL has been saying, and it certainly doesn't apply now. The World Series we'll get into, but how does that play out for pitchers and position players in baseball? Like, you're playing 162 games. We don't know if that'll change or whatever with the CBA or whatever the case may be. But how does that play out? In particular, T, where you and I think we're on the same page. Now, guys, right? 5 innings. Great job. 5 innings. We didn't grow up with 5 innings. We didn't grow up with 5 innings. You gave me 7, and you got your setup guy, and then you got your closer. 5 innings now, and you patting guys on the back. I heard Tom Glavine talking about it, and he was a part of one of the greatest of all time in terms of rotations. 5 innings, and you're patting guys on the back? No, give me 7 2/3 with the setup guy and the closer. That's what I want. And baseball, to me, I think baseball has slowed down because there's so many setup people coming into the games, in particular the playoffs.
Well, it's first of all, the person who said 6 innings is a quality start. I need to find him and his family, but because it's interesting because back in the day, and again I'm showing my age, I guess, but there's something about facing a team a fourth time. I pretty much saw damn near every one of Seaver's starts with the Mets, when he was in his heyday. And it was a sort of thing.
Nolan Ryland recently, T, has said, listen, these guys are Carter. Like when Tom Seaver and I and others, we pitched with the assumption that we were at the very least going into the 8th inning. Then you got a guy, the lefty, righty thing. You shut him down. Then you bring your closer in. Now guys are being rewarded for 5 innings. And I have no problem with Nolan Ryan having a problem with that. Because in 5 innings, you still got all these innings to pitch. Not to mention, if it's a playoff series, then you got the setup, and they may come back or they may not come back. It's just different, Tony. It really is depressing in terms of when you look at how baseball when we were growing up, as opposed to these guys getting pat on the back for going 5 2/3. Really. And to me, it didn't seem like you had as many the arm injuries that you had back in the day. Tommy John was an anomaly. When he, and remember, Tommy John was a better pitcher after the surgery than before. I mean, it wasn't like he was a terrible pitcher before then, but here's the thing: the whole importance on the bullpen, it's almost too specialized now. Because I go back and forth with the lefty and righty thing. These are all, my thing is, if the guy is good enough to get you out 2-3 times in a game, he's good enough to get you out a 4th time as well. And look, I get the whole thing of quality relief, but it can wear you down. I think we saw that this year with the Rays. I think their bullpen collectively, by the time you got to the real important games this year, they were worn down. And you see that I think that's what wound up happening with Milwaukee. It didn't help that they scored a half a run a game either in the playoffs, but that's a whole other story in and of itself. But you look at the Dodgers, T, when you look at the way they ran the controversy in bringing in a lefty to bring in with Freddie Freeman and Rosario and those guys, there was a huge controversy over that. Why they didn't use a lefty in that position?
Well, this way. How did the Atlanta Milwaukee series basically end? Josh Hader versus Freddie Freeman.
Right.
They and Freeman won.
Right.
Now see again, a lot of that has to do with the fact that you may be able to get him out. You may be able to get Hader may be able to go out and get it done, but it's different. It's a whole different thing in the playoffs because again, it's like football in the sense of every possession means something. Every inning means something. One of the reasons why, especially after last night, I know this series is going to go 7 is because every inning is almost going to be a new game. And it's not even about the leads or what have you.
And not only that, to your point, T, Atlanta didn't use any of their major guys that get outs. Like they just did junk pitches and stuff to get through the game too.
Actually, he you could make somewhat the argument that they stayed with Fried maybe a little too long. But see,
right, but I mean, they didn't go to Masick and stuff like that. They didn't go to those guys because they figured, okay, we got our game won. We stole one in Houston. We're gonna go home. And we'll use Masick and those guys then. So it's almost like, okay, we'll just throw this to the wolves and whatever, and then deal with it.
I didn't get that sense. I just think Houston just could see, much like Game 1, Atlanta took Houston out of their comfort zone, and then in game 2, Houston took Atlanta out of their comfort zone. Now the next 3 games, no DH. So that now that's going to change how they make these moves with the pitchers and what have you. And look,
that was the more reason why I thought that.
losing. It goes without saying, losing Charlie Morton is huge.
Right, and that's the more reason why I thought that with the 3 games coming up, that Atlanta said, you know what, we're not gonna win this. So we'll just throw whatever, and we're gonna keep our best going into Atlanta. That's what I saw. Like they conceived game 2. They already won game 1, which means they split that they want, and now they just don't have to throw their best in game 2 because they're already conceding game 2, and they're gonna get ready for 3, 4, and 5 with their best, with Masters and all those guys and the closers and stuff. Just like if if the Dodgers had done that kind of thing. So the Braves are looking at 3, 4, 5, and they're gonna have their long guys, their middle guys, and their closers, because they're prepared for it now, because they already lost game 2 and they got clobbered and they threw some people out at the Wolves, and they're done with it.
Well, but see, I think it's more of the Morton thing than anything else. Okay. Because again, that's huge. I mean, they were looking for him to possibly pitch, I think, game 5 on, I guess would have been like 3-4 days rest. It would have been like 4 days rest. But see, the last 4 or 5 years with these playoffs, where we've seen managers literally they've outmaneuvered themselves. But see, this year, at least with the last 2 series, it's been more the injuries. I mean, when they lost Serger for game 6, they had to scramble because they were all, going into game 6 and 7, their whole thing was, we can go into Atlanta with Serger and Bueller for game 7. But once Serger basically couldn't pitch game 6, they were basically forced to. But see, here's the ironic thing. Remember going into the season, the Dodgers, it was like they had a shame of riches. You still had Bauer, you had Price, and even they had a surplus of riches. This was even before they went out and got Serger. But again, I guess it sort of speaks to what the Giants did during the year to sort of force the Dodgers' hand. But in speaking in the now, this series is still up for grabs. I mean, it's now it's going to be tough now for Atlanta because they basically just lost arguably the number 1 starter.
Right.
Arguably the number 1 starter. So now
who's familiar with that franchise too.
Exactly. Right. It's twofold there. And while their youngins have grown up very, very quickly, you're asking them to do a lot now. But see, they are going back home. And see, that 2-3, this is where the 2-3-2 match setup can be a help for a team like Atlanta, because like you said, they got to split. So if they basically hold serve, they don't have to go back to Houston. But we all know how look. Houston's probably 2 best games, other than the clincher the other night, was those last 2 games in Boston.
So what do you do? What do you do with yourself in that debate, in that atmosphere, and trying to understand and love baseball at the same time, T? Not necessarily you, because you're going to love it anyway, but someone who turns it on, and you got these controversies and things. Are the controversies good for baseball? Is the cheating for somebody to come and go, hey, this is the team that cheated. Let me investigate. Is that good for baseball, or is it not something that you want?
I'll answer it like this. Game one, lowest rated game one in like 15, 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But
I wouldn't have
but
thought
here's
that.
the funny,
I wouldn't have thought that low.
here's the funny thing though. Here's the funny thing. If you go by all the major sporting events since the beginning of COVID, Game one was actually the 6th most watched event since COVID. Only like a couple of Super Bowls and the NCAA tournament and the Olympics outdrew them. But baseball as a whole is in trouble. And see, it doesn't help that we're looking at the specter of a lockout as well.
And not only that, it's two things that I got to bring to you, T, because you know it better. Number one, the baseball lockout. Certainly, we're looking at December, which tells me like I guess I'm not close enough that they can't get it done before 2 months. You're really going to say that you're going to have to be locked out way before you're locked out? Number one. Number two. This whole notion, and Double G gonna be on that Atlanta baseball, Manfred, right, can say, well, Georgians don't have a problem with the chop in Atlanta, but the rest of the world does. So if the rest of the world has a problem with Atlanta doing and that whole chop, and it's one person that has a problem with it, why would you not fix that? Why would you put that regionally into Atlanta and just the Braves? Because Cleveland already said they gone with the Washington football team. They changing their name. I forgot, it was Cleveland something, whatever.
Guardians. Right. Cleveland Guardians.
So
And by the way, apparently there is a roller derby team in Cleveland called the Guardians that are suing them because of that. That's a whole other side story in and of itself.
Yeah, and that's a conversation. But the Braves, why fight this? Like, why fight it? Just let it go.
But see, here's the thing. You opened that door when you took the All-Star game away.
That's true.
You opened the door when you could see that's just as explosive an issue as the voting rights thing. And the funny thing is, with Houston winning last night, it basically ensures that there are going to be 3 games in Atlanta this week. So in a sense, they're going to get back the money that they lost from All-Star Week in full fold, because they're going to get 3. They're basically going to get, in a sense, 3 All-Star games. And see, what's different about the Braves now is this is not the old Braves fans now. These fans actually come to the games. They don't have to, they didn't like struggle to sell out during any of their postseason games. It's a different Atlanta. At least in this instance, it's a different Atlanta sports town, because they're actually coming to see the postseason.
But T, it's Manfred who's putting it on those Braves fans to saying, well, our Native Americans in Georgia are cool. So
he's talking about he's talking out the other side of his ass. Let's just be honest with you.
I mean, really, that's what I'm saying. Like, so if you're doing that, then does any ultimate change come with the Braves, or are we Gary Gray?
No, and you know what? They're gonna, it will happen to them is what happened to Washington. They'll get shamed into it, but they're gonna make it so that it works to their advantage, because the very day that now when when Daniel Snyder bought the Washington team a few years back, he bought it for $800 million. If that team were to go, if you believe all the Jeff Bezos rumors, the price starts at about $8 billion. And remember, you haven't even factored in yet that they still haven't made the change. See, the Guardians have made the change. We know they're going to be the Cleveland Guardians next year. We still don't know what the Washington, traveling Motor Kings and whatever are going to be called in the next.
Meaning that they may have
meaning that's going to be even more. That's going to be even more money when they change the name, because you've already got people hoarding a lot of Redskin paraphernalia as of right now.
What I was going to ask you, that meaning that even with the Guardian and other teams moving forward, we still don't know if it's sensitive enough for Native Americans, is what you're saying?
It is sensitive to Native Americans, but see, unfortunately, I'll just come around and say it. White folks don't care.
Right.
Unless look, Snyder has been avoiding this all. Remember, he said he would never change the team. He got shamed. He's being shamed into naming the team.
And he MFing everything.
And he's gonna do it because it's gonna put some money in his pocket. That's only it's not like Daniel Snyder woke up and had a come to Jesus moment. He had to come to, I can make some money off of this moment.
Right.
Let's be complete. Let's be completely fair here. It's Daniel Snyder did not have a change of heart. Daniel Snyder saw that he could make a couple of bucks, and that's the main reason. And also, he knows that the day that the new paraphernalia comes out, that's going to be even more. Here's the thing.
Yeah.
What's going to be more, the new Washington paraphernalia, or when they actually sell the team? It's pretty close.
Yeah.
It's pretty close. Knowing that fan base, it's pretty close, because, hell, you got to remember, teams get the TV money, the season ticket holders money, and the merchandising money before a down is even played.
So I guess I'm wondering twofold, is that if baseball is going to put in a position where we avoid a strike, number one, and then number two, when it comes to the football side of things. I mean, with the football and changing the baseball name, is how much of an impact will a Cleveland name have on to other, Atlanta Braves and places like that? Okay, well, there you go. I got it. Okay. What about the first part?
No, I mean, again.
And folks who didn't see it, he put a 0 up there, by the way. So anyway,
it's no, I don't. It's not like, again, it's not like any of these folks are having to come to Jesus moment, because see, the very same thing that's happening in Washington is happening in Cleveland. I can go to Facebook or the internet and buy all sorts of Cleveland Indians paraphernalia. I can buy all sorts of Washington Redskins paraphernalia, and people will, when the name, once the Guardian's name becomes official, next year, and if and when the Washington's new name becomes official, those all that paraphernalia is going to be considered classic memorabilia.
Yeah, I mean that really is what it boils out to. So, T, when you look at, we already talked about who's gonna win the World Series, but what style, which is something that somebody had asked me about in terms of the pitching, and they were very critical of Dusty Baker and how he handled pitchers, and I think you and I had talked about that. in the past, really, to be honest about it.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at how the game is played, this low, what do they call it now? This low, whatever, where NBA players play on and
Oh,
off.
the load. I don't think. Well, see, I don't think load
I can't
management.
see pitch.
I don't think. To be
Pitchers and
honest with you,
right,
I don't
position
think there's a
players
load
can't do that.
management.
Right,
I don't think there's a load management thing in baseball at all.
right.
I think I truly think that's an NBA thing, because because of the way guys can how they're able to maneuver the thing. With baseball, there is no load man. I mean, it maybe. I mean, load management for them may be. I remember back in the day, if the Mets played a Saturday night game and Carter was behind the plate, invariably for the 1 o'clock game on Sunday, he wasn't catching. That's your load management. Guys will have some guys may have a particular day off during the week if they have, and see, I use the Mets as an example this year because they had to play 67 doubleheaders. So there wasn't really time to do any load management, so to speak. I guess maybe you could consider the fact that that you had 7 inning doubleheaders and you had the ridiculous pinch runners in extra inning games. That would be considered load management. But if everything goes as is with this alleged CBA next year, well, they've already said that the extra runner in the extra innings is going to be gone, and the scuttlebutt is that we're going to finally get a universal DH, which I'm all for. But yeah, I think big picture wise, baseball load management and NBA load management it's like apples and rhinos.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, it really makes sense in that regard. You're sticking with your
Astros in 7.
yeah. Okay.
I'm sorry, I'll stick with it. Astros in 7. It's going to even especially after last night because game one and game 2 were basically similar. It was 1 inning, basically won the game, and it wasn't like it wasn't like even when they gave up a bunch of runs, it wasn't like they were getting killed. It was just just steady whatever. I think the thing with the scary thing with the Astros is that other guys beside Jordani came through last night for them. You saw Altuve. I mean, it was the lower part of the batting order that did it for them last night. So if I'm the Braves, especially with Morton being out, that's that would be a little bit of a red flag for me.
Okay. I mean, I get that. And you have to have those red flags and go from there. I would have no red flags in.
Did we lose that? I think we lost LA. I'll wait.